Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Vicious podcast, episode 257. This week we have Luna Whitcomb of Skunk magazine. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
We also have Fumidor with us. How's it going, Fumi?
How's it going, guys? Cheers.
Before we get started, everybody be sure to check out the virtual Aquaponic Cannabis Conference, November 13th and 14th. You can check out the info around me. We'll be live on this same YouTube channel, Ponics. If you're listening to this in audio format, you can find that live on YouTube from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific time. We will have 26 hours of content because I'm a glutton for punishment. Yeah, check it out. We have a huge long lineup of people that we'll be announcing next week. So definitely check that out. We also have apmjclass.com. If you guys are looking for education, you can check that out there. Pull it up beforehand as always, but you can check us out over there. We do have quite an enormous library of content now, with new content every week or two on aquaponic cannabis growing from Marty and myself, with grows, builds, and farm tours from around the world, with different places that we're working on. So definitely check that out. We have a ton of great info on there. Thanks a lot for joining us, Luna. You have a ton of awesome content. I know I'm definitely a huge fan of all the awesome articles that you're putting out on both Facebook and on Skunk. And I've had a chance to meet a lot of the people from Skunk over the years, hanging out a lot with Dennis Perone and everybody else down in California. So it's super cool to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us. And why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do? You have some monster plants and all kinds of cool stuff going on.
Hey, thanks. So yeah, I'm an author for Skunk magazine, a writer, editor, also administrating for the new forum that's being developed, which hasn't been released yet, but we're putting it together, putting a lot of work into it, and trying to create a new educational platform for the world to learn how to grow organic medicine. Pretty exciting. Yeah, I like to, I'm really big into living soil. Fascinated by microscopy. I'm really big into microscopy and trying to maximize diversity of different microorganisms and microbes, fungi inside of the soil. I have some processes that I've been developing and working on that I release kind of in pieces. I want to make sure that everything is dialed in and doing well before putting all my recipes out there, but we could talk a little bit about that. Some really exciting work that I am into with polysaccharides and maximizing biological diversity through using polysaccharides as a food source.
That would be great. Yeah, we haven't had anybody talk about polysaccharides at all. Please tell us more. That's really interesting.
Oh, really? Sweet. We could talk a whole bunch about this. So I'm a big nerd for compost teas, yeah, and just inoculants in general. And, when I first got into compost teas, it's pretty standard, use molasses, right? And I kind of dove into this concept of, using molasses and the profile that it provided inside of compost tea. And upon learning some more, discovered that the simple sugars, the glucose source, these food sources, what we give our compost teas change the diversity inside of our teas, the inoculant that we give to our soil. So, people will add fish hydroxylate, kelp, molasses. And I was doing some reading by Elaine Ingham, and she talks a lot about oat flour, and how oat flour is kind of a superior food source for compost teas. I see you scrolling through all my stuff. So I dove into that a little bit further, learning how in nature and the decomposition of organic matter in nature, certain bacteria and fungi prefer different food sources. They prefer different carbohydrates, different glucose chains. So I started playing around with using polysaccharides instead of simple sugars in my compost teas, and came up with some really cool stuff to really maximize the diversity coming out of the teas. And I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with it, but a lot of terpene profiles, a lot of terpenes require specific microbes and bacteria to be present in the soil, and they create terpene profiles in the plant. And so maximizing the terpene profile of your plants comes from maximizing the diversity of microbes inside your soil. So to me, it's just like, when I have to maximize the diversity of biology inside of my compost teas, how am I going to do that? So I started playing with these polysaccharide sources. I'm just going to ramble on a whole bunch. Started playing with these different polysaccharide sources. So there's 5 main categories of polysaccharides, right? The complex carbohydrates. I'm jumping all over the place. I'm going to back up a little bit. So a complex carbohydrate breaks down slower than a monosaccharide. Polysaccharide breaks down slower than a monosaccharide. So these complex sugar sources, they break down slower than simple sugar sources. Molasses, sugar, straight glucose, these are all simple sugars. They get consumed really quickly by biology, and a specific spectrum of biology consumes them really quickly. The numbers explode, they consume it all very fast, and then they can die out inside of your soil and inside of your compost tea. They can also overfeed your compost tea throughout the balance of the biology. We'll get into that a little bit later, talking about specific microbes inside of compost teas. I'll get back to the polysaccharides. So to maximize the diversity and maximizing the polysaccharides, the 5 different main categories of polysaccharides are, geez, I haven't said this in a while. So we have our starches. They come from starches, from like grain, carbohydrates, things like that. They come from mushrooms, they come from algae, they come from insects, and they come from plants, right? So the plants are like our cellulose, that's our plant-based polysaccharide. Then we have our chitin from mushrooms. Then we have our algae produces a specific polysaccharide. The name escapes me. Mushrooms, they have chitin also, but they have what's called beta-glucans. And so all of these different polysaccharides feed different profiles of biology. And so I introduced all of these different components into compost teas to maximize diversity, to maximize terpene profiles in my plants. There's my very long-winded explanation of polysaccharides and what I'm doing with them.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, and actually, I would love for you to touch again on it's something that we've talked about a lot on Fumi's show and on my show, but just about how you're absolutely right with the certain microbes having to be present to activate certain terpene profiles, because they are immune system responses, right? The plant's trying to respond to some type of environmental factor. So it has to have that present. Otherwise, it's not going to waste energy to create that secondary metabolite. I think you hit the nail on the head on that with how you're explaining it.
Good. And yeah, it's super fascinating stuff. I really love it. And the science of enzymes and how that connects to create enzymes, or enzyme profiles attract certain microbes. So I'm always trying to introduce a wide diversity of microbes also, of enzymes also, through ferments of different kinds, different sources of enzymes and things like that. So just kind of having a complete system in place. The enzymes that break down certain polysaccharides need to be present or help the breakdown to come about faster, so it's more available. Chitinase and cellulase and beta-glucanase, I think, is one too. So having these things present by fermenting the polysaccharide sources before adding them to teas also is something I've been playing with, which I don't have tons of I don't have double blind studies behind a lot of these things. They're just things that I'm kind of working on and playing with, adding to my teas and then giving to my plants and seeing how they respond. But I encourage people to look into it so there can be more information on it, because I don't hear a lot of people talking about it or doing it. So I'd love it if people adopted it, and then, you know, we can collectively create new processes that make better medicine for everybody.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I know we're working on a project we just started talking about this week called Open Nutrient Project. That's very similarly aligned. I need to get in touch with you offline and talk to you about that, about trying to open source a lot of this aggregated information. And there's a ton of overlap between the compost tea world and the ferment world and the KNF world. And it's always silly to me when people try to like think that it's one or the other when it's both, right? They're a coin, right? It's this is compost tea and this side is ferments, right? And you have to have both in order to have a coin.
Definitely. Yeah, it's pretty common that it seems like in organic farming specifically, where people they segregate themselves into these different philosophies of organic growing. And, I have no problem with, being really passionate about a certain subject or certain field, and someone who really wants to be, I guess, purist in what it is that they're doing, go right ahead. There's a whole bunch of different ways to grow a plant. I'm not going to say anyone's wrong. There's just certain things that I subscribe to and certain things that I don't. There's certain portions of those schools of thoughts that I also subscribe to, and parts of those schools of thoughts that I don't. And I'll mix and I'll match them based on what makes sense to me, to create kind of like my own path and my own thing. It works out well for me. But I encourage everyone to just do what makes sense to them, and to listen to themselves. I've found that so many people, they'll screw up their gardens just following what other people say. And especially there's so many people out there that are really quick to give answers to problems that are really impossible to diagnose over imagery and stuff. And everyone has their own approach to these problems too, that may or may not work based on whatever you're doing and have been doing. And that's just kind of my experience in the forums talking there. But yeah, I'm gonna lost my place right now.
So what type of ferments or teas or different things is there any in particular that you found that it really stand out that maybe are less common? I know a lot of times with KNF, people are like, oh, if you deviate from Master Cho, then it's not KNF anymore. It's like, yeah, it is. Come on, relax. It's all the same. It's all the same machine. What are some of the different things that maybe you found that are maybe a little bit more less traditional that are just really awesome?
So using KNF kind of techniques to kind of deviate from KNF. Is that what you mean?
We're just using that as an example. It doesn't have to necessarily be KNF, but what are some of the different is there anything or preparations or teas or ferments or anything else that you found is kind of like, man, people need to know about this? I've talked about in the past, the super labs and the phycocyanin isolates is one example. What are some of the other different things that you found that work super awesome?
So with ferments and stuff, a lot of what I do with ferments, and a lot of KNF style ferments and stuff like that are based off of collecting enzymes and hormones, right? And so I try to specifically inputs to ferment based on their hormone profiles and their the hormones present in them. So one of the things that Cho teaches that I think is just an invaluable piece of information is that certain hormones are present in certain plants based on the growth stages that they're in. And certain plant inputs have more hormones than others. One hormone that I'm really into is jasmonic acid, or methyljasminate, which is a stress response hormone that's really present in bamboo shoots. And he talks about this in his book, Fermenting Fresh Bamboo Shoots, and how they cause an explosive vegetative growth. They can, the jasmonic acid, the methyljasminate also, it brings out terpenes as well, because since it's a stress response hormone, it's like giving the plant stress without actually giving it stress. Yeah, there you go. And so plant inputs that are rich in jasmonic acid, my favorite one is premature blackberries, and they're abundant here where I am in Oregon. So I go out and I get a big 5-gallon bucket and I ferment the whole thing and make my my FPJ out of premature blackberries. Oh, look, there's a little picture right there too, where you were just looking at the blackberries. You don't have to go back, it's okay. But I'll use that. If I can find bamboo, I'll use that in veg. I like to use the premature blackberries right when they go into flower. And it's like a transition ferment that really helps them shoot pistils and really helps with that terpene production, and immediately with the trichome production. And I've kind of noticed that the plant will take on like a berry scent. Yeah, that right there. That took so long to make. To pick all those little berries and to fill that 5-gallon bucket took forever. And that was, I think, 1 or 2 doses on my farm. I highly recommend doing it. The plant response from playing with these hormones and playing with these ferments is drastic. But I do want to mention that, sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'm talking kind of funny. I do want to mention that when using these ferments, it's very important that you use local inputs. You don't want to go to the grocery store and buy things that have been handled by a bunch of people. Since we're playing with biology and multiplying biology, you don't want something that's been handled by 100 different people or been transported, across the country or hundreds of miles in a dirty truck, and then you're taking it and you're throwing it in sugar, and then you're throwing it in water, and can be definitely not beneficial for your plant, right? It's best to use local inputs grown in your environment. One, because they're cleaner, but also they have local biology attached to them, and that's been acclimated to the environment and is more likely to survive and thrive and break down that input as well. Because since the enzymes on the plant matter attract specific microbe-specific or enzyme-specific microbes, and so when you introduce them, it activates it faster, right? And also, when using these ferments, it's important that you follow the full category of input. That didn't really make sense, but so in Korean natural farming, they always talk about using all of the inputs together. You never want to use them alone, right? You don't want to use FPJ by itself. You want to use it with a microbial inoculant, with the enzyme source. And they also talk about using it with OHN. I feel like I can get away without using OHN when using my FPJs. I just like to add it to my compost teas as my microbial inoculant. In KNF, they use what's called IMO, indigenous microorganisms, as their inoculant. Lactic acid bacteria serum. And that was a little bit earlier in the season. And so I make sure that that I have that complete recipe, almost like baking a cake. You got to make sure every kind of needed thing is in there, right? So I make my compost tea as my microbial inoculant. I'll add my enzymes. In KNF, they use brown rice vinegar. I prefer to use sprouted seed teas, or if I am strapped on time, I'll go and pick up some SLF 100. And then I'll add, I make my own labs or AEM and add that to my compost tea post brew, and I add my FPJ post brew, and that's how I use my my ferments. So this is not a KNF process, but I'm using a lot of KNF concepts, right? So that's That's one of the things, is using ferments, using FPJs in conjunction with compost teas. Bamboo, blackberries. I like doing pumpkin, squash, cantaloupe is another great one. Just today I used those 3 inputs as my ripening ferment, using those ripening hormones to get them all finished up, go into senescence and bulk up in the last bit of week.
We had a question from chat. Do wild blackberries do this as well? And another question from chat. Do you have a YouTube channel?
I do not have a YouTube channel. Yeah, wild blackberries is what I'm using. I just walked around the property and picked blackberries for hours with a friend. It's very tedious. Very tedious task for sure.
So what are some of the, do you work a lot with I know you do some stuff with lactobacillus. What are some of the different things that you've found with lactobacillus? I know that you're using it for all different types of stuff, and I've worked quite a bit with that as well. What are some of the different applications that you found for labs?
So I ferment soybean meal from my chutney source to add to my compost teas post brew to help break down my chitin or my chitin. So my chitin comes from, the mushroom extracts that I'll add, or the, the insect frass, because it's present in the care space of insects and stuff. So when I add that to my tea, I make sure to add fermented soybean meal as an enzyme source to break it down. So soybean meal is a big one. I was playing with alfalfa meal, and I think I talked to you about that, right? How there's a lot of talk about.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate on how long tricantanol is maintained in any type of brews or ferments, because there's a ton of suspicion about it, but there's almost, if you actually go on Dr. Duke's database or some of the others out there, there's next to no actual hard data on tricantanol and how much of it survives harvest of the alfalfa or some of the other inputs that can have tricantanol, and then how, is that present after compost tea brewing, and is that present after fermentation? I know I've read some pretty interesting things that the tricantanol is very unstable and can be broken down pretty quickly, particularly in fermented situations. But there is no hard data on that I'm aware of. If someone can link some in chat, please do. But as far as I'm aware, there isn't a ton of actual verified data on that. Maybe something I don't.
No, I don't think so. My original intention was to extract the tricantanol. But I remember, I was talking to a good handful of people, and they kind of pointed me to other talks on hormones and, phytohormones, and people talking about it. I heard someone say that, the best way to just get it into your plant is by top dressing fresh alfalfa and just letting it break down. Was it you that said that once it's once the alfalfa is dried, it's not viable?
Yeah,
was that you?
Yeah, that was, and that was from, I believe it was Clackamas Coot or somebody else that had done some testing with it. I don't remember if it was Coot or somebody else, but someone else that was really into soil stuff told me that once it's chopped down, that it loses most of the viability of the tricantanol through desiccation. Again, I don't know if anyone's proven that out beyond that. I haven't seen any data for that, but I've heard that from 3 or 4 people that I trust on other topics.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know so many people up here in Oregon who get those little alfalfa pellets and they just cover their pots with them. And I'm not particularly a big fan of that idea. But my soil has alfalfa meal in it, and it's hard to ever really know which inputs are really doing the best things over others without, tons and tons of side-by-side research. And it seems like that information is pretty much hoarded and not really one to kind of collaborate on.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, again, this is the type of stuff that we need to kind of work together. I think that we can get rid of a lot of the things that drive a lot of us nuts that people often debate, like some of the religion of organic topics and some of the other stuff that people have just been doing for so long and don't understand why. A lot of it, there's a chemistry reason why, and we learn from it and then can extrapolate or improve upon it or better refine it. And a lot of it is just grow science, and it's nice to finally have the resources. I think especially with the plague and everything that's happened in the world the last year or two, it's really cut down the cost of on-site testing for a lot of identifying a lot of the microbes and doing DNA sampling, and a lot of this other testing equipment is really come down in price, and we're going to have access to a lot more tools in the immediate future to better analyze and better break down a lot of this stuff. You see that a lot with a lot of the nutrient testing equipment has really come down in price in the last year or two as well in terms of on-site testing. So you're seeing that already even before some of the newer DNA stuff is coming out. So really excited about that, and how much people are kind of finally working together. I think this year with the prices of stuff being a little bit cheaper, it really kind of has a lot of people are working together in a way that they kind of worked before, and that's been this a silver lining on a dark cloud.
Yeah, competition is fierce. Market is saturated.
So tell us about your plants. You have some monsters that we were showing a little bit earlier.
Thanks. Yeah. What do you want to know?
What strains are you growing, and oh, here's Coot. He might be able to explain it to us with the trichanthanol. Actually, let me ask him real quick we'll ask him once he's connected, but what strains are you growing out there?
So I got a whole bunch of things that I made that I've been playing with. I took blue kryptonite and I crossed it with UK cheese, and then I back crossed that a couple times, and then I call that moon cheese, and then I crossed it with just one's animal cookies, one's Gorilla Glue 4, and one's Diamond OG. The Diamond isn't super hyped, but and so I have probably like half of my garden is that, and then I got some stuff from a friend. Geez, what's the name of his company? Oh no. Till Whitby, and then the other one is Panameras, him and his partner. They did some Fluberry crossed with Fire OG and crossed with Blue Magoo. I got some of those two going on. And then the one, which I think was bred by Clackamas Coot, isn't it?
Which one? The one?
The one?
Yep, that's Coot's.
So I think he got it from Coot too. I believe that's what he told me. So it's a Fluberry cross with the one, and I'm growing that one too. So I'm actually growing some lineage from him. What else I got out there? I got a row of plants from Omahuerta Genetics.
There we go. Like background noise. All right. Yeah. Sorry about that. Happens sometimes when people connect. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay. So yeah, I'm just growing some of that stuff. I put everything out really early. I got my plants in like May 4th, which I think was probably a mistake, honestly. I think probably like later May would have been a better idea. I was growing in 400-gallon pots, or I am growing in 400-gallon pots, and I just maxed them out, like completely maxed out those 400-gallon pots. And my plants are massive, some of them range, I have one that's 12 by like 16 feet wide. Between, most of them are 10 feet tall. I don't think there is any under 10 feet tall. And then they're between like 10, 12, and like 15 feet wide. Like they're really, really wide. And I try to do that on purpose. I like when I was vegging them, I made sure to spread them out. They were never, their leaves were never touching as they were vegetating. I also gave them some coconut water, which
Yeah.
cytokinin, stunts optical dominance, and so I was giving them coconut water kind of early on to kind of get them to like push out. And I think that's one of the main reasons why my plants were so super wide, because everyone in the area, all their plants got really tall. They didn't get near as wide as mine. And everyone's like, what did you do so different to make your plants so wide? And I think that that was really it. I think that that could have been it. It was really staying on top of not letting the leaves touch each other when they were younger, and giving them that coconut water when they were young. I think that was a big part of it.
Coconut water is awesome. I know when I was in Jamaica, a lot of the times they'll take that and add that as up to a quarter of some of the ferments that they'll do. They'll do like a 55-gallon drum and do it up to a quarter full of coconut water, throw all their fruit skins in there, like their sweet sop, sour sop, mango skins, like whatever, throw all that in there and then put another quarter-ish of it to third of it as milk, and then top off the rest of it with water and mix it all up, and then put a lid on it, and then they'll seal that up for 3 or 4 weeks and then take that out, and they use that as a finisher or transition in flowering, basically, input, and it works freaking awesome. But it's kind of a different version of it than what a lot of people have been taught. But I've personally seen that at 3 separate farms in Jamaica, or some variant of that.
That's pretty awesome. What is that called?
I don't think they have a name for it. They just call it, I don't know, just a ferment that they use. They didn't have a specific name for it, but I've seen that up in Westmoreland on the south side of the island, down by White House-ish.
That's super awesome. So it's coconut water, milk, water, fruit?
And fruit skins, yep.
Fruit skins? Do you know the ratios for that?
I have no idea. I'd have to go back and I'd have to go down there and ask them, but that might be happening here soon. I got to go down to Puerto Rico. I might be able to use that as an excuse to Jag Islands on the way home.
That's awesome.
Coot, are you with us now? We got a question about tricantanol that I think you know the answer to. Looks like he's still getting his stuff sorted. We'll ask him here when he gets his audio figured out.
Cool.
What other inputs have you used as far as your plants there to get them that big? I mean, those plants look amazing. We'll throw them back up here on the screen.
Thanks so much. So the soil mix is, well, first of all, it has a massive diversity of different inputs in it. I'm a big fan of diversity of inputs, diversity of microorganisms. That's my most recent one from today. That's from from an orchard ladder. Oh, that's my friend that died. From my Facebook, huh?
I was trying to find the most recent pictures you had up.
It might be better to go to my Instagram.
Sure. Yeah. Why don't you tell everybody what your Instagram is while I'm pulling it up?
So it's Luna all day. There's only one A. So it's LUNALLDAY. The other one is someone different. It's pretty funny. But if you ever stumble upon it, it's pretty funny. But yeah, so that's my Instagram. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. That's my monster right there. So that bamboo up on the top, that's 13 feet from the top of the smart pot. And then the 2 8-foot sticks that have been attached to each other, because we couldn't find 10-foot bamboo. So the sticks are actually 12 feet wide. And you can see that it's going past that. That one's like at least 15 feet wide. The monster. That's the largest plant on my farm.
I do apologize for the occasional skipping.
Yeah. I'm definitely growing more of that. And then the 3 plants behind it are also the same genetic, and they're close to as big. I got, yeah, those are a little bit, I think those are a couple weeks old, but I have excellent trichome density, terpene profile. That's through the roof. I have a lot of different like fruity kind of scents, like really cheesy things coming through. Those 2 top ones are the most recent pictures. I just took those a couple, I think yesterday. I think I posted that top one yesterday. But it's yeah, that's one of the just regular moon cheeses. That thing is also a monster. Yeah, that's like 12 by 12. And yeah, you can see that the, you know, some of the weed is just straight white, you know, it's got like some purple undertones underneath it, some purples and pinks, and the weed is just white. And I attribute a lot of that to the soil mix. I actually picked up my soil from a company called Sensei. And I selected them based on knowing that they use principles, or, you know, they subscribe to, they adopt principles and research from the book, The Ideal Soil. Are you familiar with it?
I haven't heard of that one, no.
It's about proper mineral balancing, and like really making sure that your nutrients are balanced in the right ratios so that they don't lock things out and they, you know, are uptaken when they need to be uptaken and stuff. So I think it's also it's a mixed cocoa coir and peat moss based soil. So it holds a lot of water. I usually keep my plants bars in 120 millibars, but I found with this soil that you can take it even lower. And I was running it at like 50 millibars, which is like super saturated, right? And the plants were just stoked. They just ate it up, super high turgidity, like the entire time, until I got into flower, and you know how flower is, things that they start to take a bunch of energy from the rest of the plant. But yeah, I'm really pumped on the synthesized soil. And then I implemented all my soil food web techniques with making sure that the complete soil food web is there inside of the soil. So identifying, your bacteria and your protozoa, your different types of protozoa, your nematodes, make sure there's microanthropods and the appropriate numbers of protozoa and diversity of protozoa as well, which are all great. I use my microscope when I scope my compost tea with the recipe that I'm using for the first time. I posted it in one of the soil food web microscopy groups, and everyone commenting on my video was like, "How did you get this bacterial diversity?" Because a lot of them kind of follow they subscribe to the ideology of using oat flour, and I was using oat flour along with other things as well. And they were like, what did you do to get this? And I was kind of like, oh, I'll tell you later, when I used it. But I did mention, I don't like to give specific inputs of what I use because I want people to look it up and do it themselves and come up with different ways to do it. But it's about using those 5 different main categories of polysaccharides. So do your research, figure it out yourself. Let me know what you figure out, and let's work on it together, right? But I am reluctant to just give out specifically everything that I'm doing.
Welcome. We had a question for you on tricantanol and whether or not it's still present after harvest of alfalfa. I figured you might know the answer to that one. Yeah.
Yes, it is. And as a matter, one other thing about that particular auction, I'm not sure if I believe it's an auction. It might be a hormone. All auctions are hormones, but not all hormones are auctions. So I don't want to. But anyway, that's the only plant on this planet that produces that particular compound. As in the same way, the only plant on this planet that produces the one that's in kelp. Alginic acid. That's the only, and not even there's 3 forms of marine algae. There's red, green, and brown. And it's not even, just in the area of brown, there's 1,800 varieties around the world. But only brown marine algae produces alginic acid. You don't find it in green algae, and you don't find it in red, also known as Irish moss. You might have seen that among you vegans, use it as a thickening agent for different applications. So that's where it comes from, is from that red seaweed, if you will, for lack of a better. Kelp and seaweed are interchangeable for this limit, not amongst marine biologists, but ask a few of them. I sent him some papers on an uncle of mine, and he's been published for the last 50 years, and is a professor emeritus at the big University of Miami in marine biology. So I always get humorous when people try to dictate to me about marine algae and other ocean-based materials. So I'll leave it at that. But anyway,
So
yeah, if you go to,
from what I
you were
understand,
looking.
beeswax has a lot of tricontinol in it also, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, from gathering it from the beeswax, yes, from gathering it from the alfalfa, but they don't produce it. It's a plant compound.
So it
So
would
if you
be,
look at it,
if they didn't collect it from the alfalfa, it wouldn't be present otherwise.
correct.
Huh, I did not know that.
Right. Yeah. It's which makes it old timers, and it's kind of weird for me to use that term, but one of the nicknames for alfalfa was field kelp, because it is there's a lot of what are called bionutrient accumulators, and the 2 at the top of the list are kelp and alfalfa. Because of the diversity, they're accumulating all 83 elements that plants need, and in the right balance. So not what a fertilizer salesman tells you need. You're getting it the right amount of boron, molybdenum, magnesium, manganese, go down all 83. What the cannabis trade got started with 40 years ago was what's called the law of minimums. So they come up with this group of 16 elements, and that's just absurd. But when you take in the macro and micronutrients, you come up with 83. So that's why kelp is so. It can be a real, like a mainstay or center component of a soil mix, as far as an amendment that's going to provide you with a wide range of nutrients. But
it has a lot of selenium and selenium and a lot of those other trace elements that you
correct.
have time finding in a way that's not from a mining byproduct. You know what I mean? That it really is
Correct.
You can get in a clean way. Just don't go crazy. We've talked about
Correct.
if you overdose with kelp,
Sure.
causing arsenic issues. But a small amount of kelp, or kelp when used as directed, is great. The one other thing I
don't have a calculator. I don't have a calculator in front of me with somebody who does. If you'll take the numeral 1 and divide that by 120, that will give you the percentage of what I recommend to use. So I recommend 1 cup of kelp meal, not seaweed extract, which is a manufactured product. 1 cup in 120 cups of, basically a cubic foot is 120 cups. So that's where I'm getting the numbers from. 120 cups, and I'm using 1 cup. So if you divide 1 by 120, I mean, you're going to come up with like what, 0.7% or something. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty minimal. And the other one, what's that?
0.0008, I think it was.
Yeah, so that should send shockwaves through, the kids. Yeah, but it's got selenium, or whatever the element we don't want to do this week is. It usually changes. So, but anyway, for
Silica's so hot right now.
I was going to say
What's
selenium caused the whole extinction at one point in the planet. So.
right.
I was going to ask Coot about barley for chitinase. Luna was talking about chitinase from a couple of other sources, from soybeans and from some other things. What is some of the
Sure.
stuff that you were you talk about barley? I don't think you've talked about it on my show though, about chitinase from barley.
Okay, so let's let me get my notes open, because this one I don't have on memory. Apologize. Most of it do. Okay, so when the seed is malted or sprouted, that's all malting means, is that it's sprouted. And so what happens when a seed is germinates, was encoded by the host plant with any number, about 150 different enzymes, of which the big ones are, and only barley has this. Every plant has amylase, but and especially in the grass seeds, your wheat, rye, and that kind of thing. All of them have amylase, but it's in the form of the alpha amylase. Only barley contains beta amylase. So that's an important distinction. Some of the other then are cellulase. So meaning that's the one that deconstructs cellulose, or, your saccharides. You have chitinase, phosphatase. That should get every cannabis grower up and running down the hall, phosphorus. You have protease, which is your protein. And then you have urease, which is your urea. And then some of these I'm not going to try to pronounce, so bear with me. A beta glucosidase, so for glucosides, okay. And also an aryl sulfatase. But those are just the big ones. I mean, there's 150 enzymes that we get for this 80-cent a pound product.
That's the 2-row barley. Got to be 2-row, doesn't it?
Well, it doesn't have to be, but here's the deal. Okay, 6-row is actually it's like a sativa and indica. Okay, so the whole world uses 2-row. So do we in this country, but in only North America, and even then, I'm thinking it's only the United States uses 6-row. The advantage to 6-row is that it's higher in amylase. But for our purposes, that isn't a very important enzyme. I'm not saying it's not important, but if you said to me, well, this one has 5 times the level of chitinase, I'd go, well, yeah, do it. Here's the problem with the 6-row is that it's more expensive. And especially if you're going to try to get organic, you're in la-la land as far as the price per pound. Whereas organic 2-row from Great Western Malt, they're the largest in the United States. They have about 6 facilities that crank out malted number 2-row. You're talking $40, $45 a bag for a 50-pound bag. So yeah, it's a real for what you get. I mean, if you went to and tried to find a bottle of swill, some magical mix from Weeby Groovy chemical company, to get all that out of a liquid, it would cost you the hundreds of dollars. And here we can get it for less than $1 a pound, mill it, put it in our soil mixer, especially our worm bins, and get all that enzyme activity going in before we even mix the soil. So we have our worm bins becoming more biologically alive, so that when you use it to mix our soils, if for those of us who do that, see how much farther ahead of the game we are, because it's preloaded with all kinds of cofactors, and not just, and also the bioavailability. One thing that never gets discussed is it's fine to have iron, we'll say, or grab an element, I don't care. It's fine to have that in the soil, but whether it's bioavailable to the plant's a whole other issue. So, I mean, you could put a nail in the soil and say, well, I got iron in my soil, or whatever they're made out of. But that wouldn't mean that the plant could do much with it.
That used to be kind of an old wives' tale, right? You were supposed to put like an iron stake or something in your potted plant.
Sure.
I remember reading that it basically does nothing. It just rusts.
Exactly. Yeah, it's right up there with vitamin B1. So for those who started in this really early, we were taught to use B1 in our cloning, or we wouldn't get the magical roots. That came from Mr. Jorge Cervantes essay. Yeah, Vato Loco. Anyway, so now we know after years of research that V1 is just use water or Kool-Aid. There you go. Drink the Kool-Aid, mix it up. There's a whole bunch of others. Yeah, I used it for years. I thought, oh yeah, this V1's really kicking ass. That and Super Thrive. Jesus Christ, really dating myself.
Is there any questions you'd like to ask Coot, Luna? I know that you know a just absolute ton of stuff about soil science.
Questions for Coot? Not really, but I did want to tell you that I'm growing a genetic that's been crossed with the one. So I have some of the, which I believe you bred, right?
Oh, cool. What was it crossed with?
So my buddy Todd gave it to me. He crossed it with Fumidor.
Oh wow, really? Wow. Okay.
You know who?
I've given away hundreds and hundreds of that cut. So I wish everybody well. There's a lot of people that have used it, and there's a couple that I hope my wishes aren't as good. Charging people $500 for a rooted cut. When I gave it to them for nothing, and there's about I think 12 seed companies out there that. No, we got the real deal. No, you don't. But anyway, you know how that game's played.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the flower looks fantastic.
What's that?
I said the flower looks fantastic.
Oh, you'll like it. Yeah, it's real old school Thai. All those rotting mango and sandalwood and rosewood and incense kind of things. It's not for. Well, it's just different what's sold today that passes for cannabis, at least the dispensaries in Oregon. I was thinking of, I need another, okay, I had this idea, but I need another name to add on to cannabis or Coot's Cannabis. And what I wanted to do is like travel around Oregon or Portland and buy, little tiny amounts of weed and then write up reviews on it. So Coot's Cannabis critique, how's that? That would be fun. That would be fun. Yeah.
Coot's Cannabis critique.
That would be fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, that'd be a good
Coot
time.
curtails your crappy cooties or something. Coot,
yeah.
So
I'm still trying to. I still want to find the son of a bitch. This is going back several years. The first time I ever saw cookies over at IC Mag, I thought it was an article from The Onion. I thought it was a joke, and said so, and was roundly, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking." Yeah, I did.
I'm growing a little bit of Coot. I'm growing a little bit of the forum cut. One of these days, we'll smoke a spliff. Believe it or not, it is a little bit tasty. Like smoke.
I'm not arguing that. I bet to go through all that to get that amount of weed. I mean, really?
I'm with you there.
Jesus. I mean,
people like it.
I don't know. Yeah.
What about Peskin? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're in Oregon too?
Yeah, Portland or Oregon City. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Right on. I'm in Southern Oregon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Rogue Valley.
Too much. What do you call it? Fire down there for me and heat.
Yeah.
It's been pretty rough. You guys have really been through, you folks have really been through some really hard years. For the last 5 years down there.
Last year was pretty ugly. This year wasn't as bad.
Good. Yeah, I hope everybody's doing well down there. So I've had some friends from pre-legal days, the old, what do they call it now? They don't call it black market. Now they call it, traditional growers. I love that term. Traditional growers. Everybody's got to have a term or a dressing they can hang on. So they're now traditional growers. Okay. Yeah, we were really traditional. That was during the Carter administration. So do your arithmetic there. So
Free People's Market and That was another one. I just thought of it and I can't remember it. We actually grew some seeds from that era. Actually have some germinating right now. Some Fumi just gave some away too. The cherry bomb crossed with late
Indeed.
70s
Yep. From Green
Maui
Jeans.
Wowie. Yeah, from Mr. Green Jeans.
Yeah, folks were super
I
excited.
wow.
I'm excited too.
I have a plant from Mr.
There's a
Green
metallic cherry
growing
pheno in there.
10 feet from me right now. So yeah, super.
There's one that we're doing this year. In conjunction with a friend, he and I together have over 100 years of growing under our belts. And he's got this old line that he's kept, not the same strain, but the same seed group. How's that? Since 75 when he first when he was growing on Maui. And probably came from Southeast Asia because a lot of GIs used to take their R&R in Hawaii to meet up with their wives and girlfriends, and they brought their weed and stuff. So, because it doesn't matter. And so he calls it Pakalolo. Like, so what? So anyway, we crossed it with TO, and we've got most of our stuff is outdoors because we prefer outdoors, but we have the seed ones indoors for obvious reasons, just to get the seeds from it, not to go into seed business. But I think it'd be a kick-ass cross with this really hardcore. Well, the seed group's been intact. I don't know my terms because I don't claim to be a breeder, but you know what I'm talking about. So he rejuvenated the seed lot every couple of years, kind of thing. How's that, make?
Great.
So anyway, that's what we got coming on. I think that's got a really lot of potential. I think it's probably more outdoors. Because even the TO, you're talking a landrace Thai from 76, and you're talking a Kandahar indica from 70, brought in by the importers out of Laguna Beach. So it's never been, climatized to indoor. This plant has, but not the genetics. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Though it's been growing, like I told you before, I did try to grow it outdoors every 2 or 3 years up until end of June, just to get it back out in the sun and, kind of get all the pistons firing and all that stuff. So to that extent, I've kept, maybe that's why I didn't have that horrid malady known as genetic drift. Anyway.
I did want to highlight one other thing real quick before we get too off topic here. Luna also founded a super awesome Facebook group that's kind of an all-inclusive regenerative farming group that's also now part of the Skunk magazine, but they have a ton of awesome content on here. She has a fuck ton of really amazing posts, especially early on in the group, where she does really cool breakdowns about plant hormones and auxins and all different other types of interesting things. So be sure to check that out if you're looking for another great resource to learn from Luna and a lot of the different great stuff that she's putting out regularly in terms of content. Definitely check that out.
Yeah, so that's called Regeneration Earth by Skunk magazine is the name of the group, and it's kind of like almost like our beta testing of the concept for its released on Skunk magazine's website, and for the forums are launched, and will kind of be like the Facebook equivalent of the Skunk forum.
Do you have any interest in not a focus, but some discussion on using mycelium for soil remediation for moving toxin? Okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm all about mycelium and fungal bodies and making sure that the hydro networks are intact and healthy.
Right.
And yeah. Why was that? Is there something specifically? I know about getting hydrocarbons and stuff like that.
Yeah, using kind of follow Trad Cotter from Mushroom Mountain in South Carolina. He has a mushroom company, not unlike Myriad Mycology down near you in Ashland, who have a wonderful line of powders, organic produced here in the States, not imported from Asia. But, reishi, cordyceps, turkey tail, agaricon, all of them. And they have mixes, like they have one that has 10 different mixes, 10 different powders, and they're all 55 a pound. So at 2 grams a day, that gives you basically 112 doses. So that's a pretty inexpensive supplement, $55 for 3 months worth of.
And so is
whatever.
is this like something that you take for yourself, or something that you're
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And then I'm growing my own. In fact, I'm in the process of setting up a fruiting tent for lion's mane, especially because I use that in conjunction with for microdosing. I follow Paul Stamets has a protocol where you take 2 grams of lion's mane powder and 0.2 grams of psilocybin 5 days a week. Some niacin in there too, 100 milligrams or something. But anyway, you get the idea. Well, he calls it stacking. That's his term, not mine. And so, and the other advantage to the lion's mane is that, one, it's easy to grow, easier than a lot. They're up there about as easy as oysters. I mean, nothing's easier than oysters. Let's get honest here, but they're not that far behind. And also, they make a wonderful dinner because when you cut them into steaks and then broil them with butter and herbs, it has a very crab or lobster-like flavors. It's often used in vegan restaurants for as a protein replacement. Yeah, you have fun with it. And then you take, after you get your fruit, and you harvest all that block, the fruiting block as it's called, is all mycelium. And we can take those blocks and bust them up and spread it on our compost piles and get a whole lot done a whole lot faster to get it ready for the worm bins.
Mhm.
I'm not, don't get me wrong. I'm not arguing that we don't need and want thermophilic compost. We do. All I'm saying is that somewhere along the lines before we convert it over to vermicompost, I think there's a place for mycelium to deconstruct some of the wood chips, the straw, and other things that might be problematic in a soil mix. And if we do that with something like, which is an agricultural waste, like fruiting blocks, because the mushroom companies have to get rid of these things. So here you're providing a service for a fellow small business, and we can really do some out in your, say you're growing outdoors, or a lot, no, I wouldn't say a lot, but some of the people that I work with down south, they grow in 800-gallon pots. Basically.
Cool. So you were talking about these spent mushroom blocks. I was actually looking for a whole bunch of these. I was trying to find some spent mushroom blocks, myceliated straw, to use as a mulch. I was going to dry it, make sure that it mulch with it as a fungal inoculant.
Well, here's a book that you definitely want to get. And because he's the only person that's ever written a book about mushrooms that has the word organic in the title. But anyway, it's called Organic Mushroom Farming and Soil Mycoremediation by Trad Cotter. That's 2 D's and Trad.
This one? This book here?
That's the one.
Yeah.
So yeah, his procedures, like for example, inoculating burlap, then allowing that to dry, then being able to ship that as a product. And when it gets to destination, like say your farm, then you take these sheets of inoculated burlap, lay them out in the field, hydrate them, and let that mycelium then grow down into the soil and do its number for you. So that's
wicked. What is the inoculation? Is it oyster mushrooms?
Yes. In fact, I don't know if you know about this one. They're doing this on the Mississippi tributaries as well. So you have a lot of pollutants in the water from any number of reasons on the great waterways. So they take a net type material and they load it up with wood chips. And so you have a log. That's what I'm trying to get at. You have a log of wood chips. And so you hydrate that and then you inoculate it with oysters. And once the mycelium gets going, and then you float them in the water and they deconstruct the contaminants and reduce them back to their basic elements, which is, is mostly carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, just not in, anyway, the drill. So anyway, that's the ways we can do it too, is cleaning our water. Say you had a farm, and this year with people having to go deeper and deeper to get water, I'm sure there's some contaminant potential maybe. So there would be a way to use mycelium as a way to purify the water without expensive and problematic water cleaning equipment. Just throwing some ideas out there.
Yeah, definitely. Microremediation is, I think, a huge part of our future. It needs to be.
Oh, absolutely. It has to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, if you study the history of the world, so to speak, it was fungi that hooked up with algae that formed plants. I mean, they were here long before there were plants, which preceded animals, and we're at the bottom of the animal list. We're like one of the last invitees to the party, right? So, and long after we do whatever it is we're going to do to each other, blow this thing up, there'll be fungi. I mean, always fungi forever. I mean, think about it. Every time you walk through a forest, every footstep you land, there's 200 miles of mycelium under your foot, 1 foot. I mean, that's pretty dramatic.
Yeah, I love mycelium and the communication that it has, and, those old growths. So amazing. It's just like this network of almost like a brain. It's like a big consciousnss. I kind of think of it as like a massive consciousness, like an old growth forest.
Well, in a definite way, if you study lichen, lichen is a organism that's made up of fungi and bacteria. With fungi, what's that joke? Never mind. That's not a good joke. Anyway, they run the whole thing. They use the bacteria as indentured servants. And lichen was at the very core of our soil. That's what peeled the rocks off. Soil that's very basic is rotted animal and plant material with some shattered rock. So the question becomes, where did the shattered rock come from? Lichen. And after billions of years, there was, anyway. That's why I believe
I love that
strongly.
story. It always puts an exclamation mark on the concept of time. Geological time. Like you actually have to think of like a big rock and having lichen grow like 1 inch per year or whatever, 1 inch per 100 years. I think it is. That's how slow it freaking grows. Imagine how many hundreds of years it takes to cover the rock, and then slowly over centuries, dissolve one individual rock on the entire landscape. And you talk about like everything has been dissolved, also by water too, but lichen and water creating rock dust so that soil could form. It blows my mind every time you mention it.
There's sadly, because it's probably one of the more difficult in the soil biology world, there's such a lack of understanding on the role that fungi plays. And it's a lot more than passing phosphorus around. It's a cute story, and I always enjoy a good cannabis story, but that's one of my favorites. And then the level of misunderstanding with regards to mycorrhizal and that whole thing. You got to really know your sources in this deal. There's a lot of charlatans. Leave it at that. Yeah.
Do you want to touch on that with the mycorrhizal species and how it's mainly just one species that's there are other species that will colonize cannabis roots. I do want to preface it with that, but there's predominantly just the one species that actually is
yeah. And what's really unique about that one is, guess who the biggest producer is? And this isn't a criticism. This is a good thing. So don't shoot the messenger here. But it's the Premier Horticulture up in Montreal, which is the parent company of ProMix. And you'll notice that on ProMix, they advertise or display prominently that they've already included the mycorrhizal in the soil mixes. And that's a good thing, okay? Because that company, Premier Horticulture, has had years and years experience with the hemp industry up in Canada. So they've had field tests. They've had, they got this down. And so when you go around this country and start looking at products, this is one of those where you buy it in bulk, you put your name on it, give it a cute name, and there you go. There's just a lot of rebadging on this stuff. But here's the one that Steve's talking about, that variety, that one specific strain, is almost always in all the mixes purchased from Premier, which is a good thing because they know what they're doing. They grow it on Bahia. I'm going to mispronounce it. Bahai, however you pronounce that, Bahia or Bahia grass. I think it's, yeah. And that's how it's produced.
Will that hyphal network or will, that inoculant, that fungal inoculant survive through thermal composting, like a cooking of soil?
Oh yeah, because we're only talking 140 degrees. I mean, even if somebody goes goofy, let's say they go up to 148, which, can I explain that what's crazy about that idea? Okay, so the only thing that taking the heat up does, the only thing, is it kills pathogens. Because if composting was that easy, all you'd have to do is buy used ocean containers, right? Stuff them full of plant material and close the doors and let them sit in the Medford sun for 6 weeks and then drain them and then pull out compost. But that isn't the way it works. So you take it up to 140 in Oregon, I think, I could be wrong, but at one time, under the rules of engagement for Oregon Till, the organic certification agency, was 141 Fahrenheit. Fair enough. So for this discussion, almost everything's been killed because it swipes clean. Like the thing out of the Bible: rain falls on the good and the evil, right? Well, the thermophilic came and it killed the good guys and the bad guys. They're gone. So then when we get into mesophilic, when we drop below 100, now we can start adding nutrient dense materials, and you still want to start turning that compost so that the organisms that land on the outside are getting turned faster. I mean, eventually they're going to, but that's what the turning in the mesophilic stage is. And we're going to run that till we get down around 68, 65. And if you do it right, that could take several months, and that's a good thing, because by doing that, you're increasing all of them, protozoa, bacteria, fungi, the whole 9 yards. Anybody can make a high bacteria compost. Hell, I mean, just go over to Walmart. They got bags of it for $2 out in the parking lot, kind of thing.
I use a lot of insect inputs, because I for the mesophilic bacteria as a mesophilic,
sure, right,
frass, and it's always my preferred inoculant when I start a compost tea or when doing top dressing.
I've come to believe that, okay, I don't agree, but I'm going to agree so that people, they always want to get on something. Okay, let's all take it up to 140. Hell, fuck, take it up to 150. I don't care. Just burn the shit out of it. All right. Understanding though that when you do that, nature abhors a vacuum, right? So you got to be really proactive when you get down below 100 to start getting the good stuff going. But I think and believe sincerely that at about 115, 110, we could inoculate that with mycelium and kick that in and let it take care of some serious business as it drops down into mesophilic. And as you know, once you establish a big colony of mycelium, that attracts other fungal colonies. And there's the real benefit, is that we're building diversity as well as deconstructing the straw, especially if you're using bedding. I'm thinking like a horse bedding is a real traditional thing to use. It's mixed in the manure and the urine. So, some of that goes through the thermophilic and doesn't break down like we want, but we can use mycelium to deconstruct it and make those elements and compounds available to the bacteria that can then I'm glad to talk to somebody because everybody else goes, no, I don't think so. Beck, okay, worms can't eat anything. They don't have teeth. They don't have a stomach. All they eat is bacteria, manure, bacteria, slime, exude, whatever nice term we want to use here, poop, feces. Okay. So it's not like you put peach melba over in the corner and there's a signal. Oh, there's peach melba in the north end, and all the little wormies go over there. It's a bacteria. It's like any organism. The faster bacteria can break it down, that means there's going to be more poop. And more poop means more food for worms, so it increases their reproduction cycle. So you get faster reproduction, which is already off the chart anyway, if you got things set up right. So then you add in some barley, and now we're going to bring in some cofactors to break down some of the saccharides and lignin and cellulose that's in the compost.
That's what I remember. You're big advocate for malted barley. You use that a lot in your soil mix.
Yep. I came up with that on a fluke. I'll be the first to admit it. But regardless, the changes in a garden in terms of the health of the plant. I can't discuss genetics because, well, I'm not interested. I mean, genetics are a personal choice, and if somebody got stung with a bed, hey, welcome to growing weed, man. I don't know what to tell you. Not every seed that got germinated was worth the effort. That's the law of the jungle and the way the cookie crumbles, man. And I don't get too weak, but what I can say is that, setting all that aside, what barley can do is increase the microbial activity in the soil. And a plant has two brain centers. The one is on a meristem, is the apical meristem is the brain center. It controls the production of terpenes, terpenoids, ketones. It's there to protect the foliage, the biomass of the plant. Below the soil line, the brain center is the taproot, the main root. And that's the one that's sending out the signal that's, nutrients are called up by the plant. There's this idea by cannabis growers that, well, the plant looks like it needs fill in the blank. Pick one. I don't care. Needs boron or something, something, right? Yeah, we gotta get something in there. All right. I gotta get over to the grocery store and get my fix. My bottle of swill.
It's that expensive bottle that does it, Coot. It's the boron one. Yeah, it's actually the most expensive bottle. That's the one that actually does it for you.
Of course. And but the plant calls up those ions, and the form of exchange is hydrogen. Hydrogen is the currency of soil microbes. That's why in pH the H is capitalized, because that means it's an element. The P, depending on who you talk to, it either means probable or potential hydrogen. That's okay. Let's take this back to basic chemistry. If you were to ask a chemist, how do you write calcium? Or what's a symbol, or for calcium, that person would say a capital uppercase C and a lowercase a, right? We'd all say, yeah, that's one I know. Now, if you were to ask a soil biologist, that soil biologist would say a capital C, a lowercase a, and two plus signs. Two plus signs. Yeah, there's two exchange sites. So one calcium ion can take and exchange with two hydrogen ions. Now the plant can use it, and now it's taken up by the root system. That's how it works. So cation exchange is at the key of pH, not some bottle, not some, magical, spiritual, burning of the sage, or, whatever they do at midnight out in a field somewhere. Yeah, that's the drill.
Hey, Coot, are you familiar with the concept of redox?
I'm not. I apologize.
No.
I'm not.
Okay.
But I wouldn't read much into that. knowledge base is limited, I've been told, so.
Okay. So this is kind of a new concept to me, but how I understand it is redox is the density of electrons in the soil, like the charge of the soil, which is created by the plants, and they're signaling to the soil, their amino acid enzymes, carbohydrate secretion, adding electron charge to the soil, and that the chemical compounds, the bonding, the exchange, they all take a cost of available electrons, and by increasing that charge of electrons, you can increase the nutrient compound bonding to make more available for your plant. So it's one of the reasons why people are using living mulches and stuff like that. This year I used buckwheat. Because it has a great, it creates redox, it creates an electrical charge, an electron charge in your soil very well. From what I've read, this is a new concept to me, though.
Okay, I know it under another name, I think.
Okay.
And that would be paramagnetism or paramagnetic. And for example, rock dust. Volcanic rock is lava. That's what basalt is paramagnetic. It carries a negative charge. And a subset of basalt is granite. So it also is paramagnetic. And the reason that's important is that the negative charge of that in the soil is because calcium is a positive charge. It's a capital Ca again with 2 plus signs, and it's a cation. And that means it's a positively charged. Magnesium is a cation. How'd they do that? Hold on a second. I'm sorry. I hit a button. And so then a negatively charged element would be called an anion.
Like silica.
Yes. So your silica-based soil amendments that in an ITE, bentonite, zeolite, azomite, which is a brand name, but I don't remember the right name, but it's from the first deposit was found in France in like the 1400s. And it's what they make the beehive ovens out of. It's a ceramic clay. Bentonite is mined here in Oregon over in Christmas Valley. If you've ever been there, what a joking name that is. It's kitty litter. And if you want to use bentonite, just go get a bag of, kitty litter. You're dancing. You don't need to go buy, a bag in a grocery store for $100. I mean, go get a whole bag for what, 10 or something? But the problem is that those are aluminosilicate compounds. And through chelation, it can break apart. And now you've got free floating aluminum in your soil. Why would you do that? I was thinking a good name for a consulting company would be one word with a question mark on the end. Seriously? Because that's what I usually go, seriously? Why would you do that? We say, well, here's what we did. And you're just listening to it and you're going, whoa, holy shit.
That's so funny. Yeah. I've done a little bit of consulting. I know the feeling for sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, what did you?
I'd rather get a boil implant than to go to anybody's garden again. And I mean, you just look at it, what did you do? It's just like pardon my language, but it looks like a ship bomb went off.
Right.
I mean, just like pieces of body flesh hanging like in a war zone or something. So
I had this thought because of the jacket that Fumidor has on. You can't tell me that Fumidor and Eminem don't look like brothers with the jackets.
Mom spaghetti, right?
Anyways. Sorry.
And
I've spaghetti with balls. Like you said, spaghetti with balls.
And I've come to the understanding, I've accepted it, look, we never had this. You never had commercial growers. You had guys that grew a lot of weed. I'm not saying that, but there were no commercial growers. Not like what we're talking about today, where you spent $250,000 on a greenhouse, really? I mean, I've seen a lot of greenhouses in my career, but I've never seen some of the shit I saw built here when it went legal. I mean, I was blown away. Somebody who just had way too much money and some pipe dreams. So you read all copies of the marijuana botany book, huh? Oh, is that what built this? You know. So anyway, yeah, it blows my mind. But see, I came out of a generation, there was no commercial growers. I mean, if you got, 3 plants out of your backyard, and got through a couple of years, man, you were like yippee skippy. I mean, having a farm, come on. Okay, here's my favorite story. Here's my favorite story from the 80s. All right, so this group, they probably had, I don't know, we'll say 6 or 7 strains. And they were all cool and shit, because they had a clone and they were connected. They were like groovy and stuff. So they put the plants out in this area. This was around LG content store. I think it was Arcata. That part doesn't matter. But anyway, have you seen in a commercial nursery plants that have a aluminum tag on them, where they take a stylus and they can write on it and it imprints it on the piece of aluminum? Well, they thought it'd be really groovy if they could tag the plant so that when they got out there and harvested them, they could tell the this from the that and the therefore, right? Mm-hmm. So the garden got discovered before harvest. And so they took the investigating officers took a couple of the aluminum pieces or the tags and ran them to the FBI database. And so they had a name of everybody that touched those pieces of aluminum. And they didn't go back and chop it down or anything. Didn't do anything like that at all. They waited till about a month after harvest. And then there was a come to Jesus meeting. They just grabbed everybody, at the same time and the same day. And, that was it. So out of ego, like if you're growing that much, who cares? Who cares what strain it is? I mean, mix it up, Anyway, so as early as the 83, that kind of stupidity was already starting. No, we have the Arcata, killer, or we have the Humboldt horny or something, some silly ass name. Like, who cares? So all I'm saying is this wasn't the brightest group of people that put this together. All right. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, just throw tons of money at a project and it's going to be successful, right?
Yeah.
That's how it works. Just dump a bunch of money into it.
The part I don't understand, this one has me puzzled, is that when it became legal here 5 years ago, be 6 years this January, within the first 6 months, the number of grocery stores that closed their doors was mind-boggling. I mean, you're talking about people that were players way before there was a medical card thing here in Oregon. We're talking like the mid 90s. And there were grocery stores in the 80s. And then like, as soon as it got legal, man, it was over. They just like went away. I don't understand how the two are connected, but
just gotta adapt, right?
I guess so. I mean,
are not competitively excluded.
A guy from your part of the world, and he's been growing long before there was a medical, he's old timer, about 30 years or more. Mm-hmm. And like he told me, he says, "Hey man, don't you get it?" He goes, "I have to grow what the dispensaries want to sell. I don't take it to them and go, here, this is the one you want. If they want whatever, that's what I'm going to grow. This isn't Woodstock anymore. It's over. And if they want to grow Spittles or Skittles or Piddles or whatever the fucking name is, Yeah.
Cake.
So
It's chicken and egg, right? You know, like the customers come in basically saying, what's your highest THC? And they don't really know a lot of strains. The few that they
Yeah.
know maybe are the OG
Yeah.
Kush or somebody, you know, some fancy thing, like you said, Skittles or Runts or whatever that their friend told them about is, you know,
Yeah.
the hot new thing.
That's
Where they
right.
see maybe they have a high time subscription or something else.
Yeah,
So they
yeah, yeah,
basically just,
exactly.
oh, just give me that.
Yeah.
And then that's all that ever sells, you know.
Yeah.
It's pretty reductive.
I get
it's
it.
sad.
Yeah. See, yeah, it is. It's a weird business. I mean, look, you know as well as I do, since you live, well, all three of us, Luna, Fiona, and myself, we all live in Oregon, and we've seen the changes in the last 5 or 6 years. And you know, anybody that has a pipe dream of getting a license and making $1 million, I mean, sober up, get in a 12-step program immediately, okay, and give it up, because it isn't going to happen. It just isn't going to happen. There's too much funny money floating around, you know, that
Backdoor pounds.
you know who's running the big farms. And now you got now you got cartel people. I know there's a couple busted down in Southern Oregon, but there was one busted in Eastern Oregon 2 weeks ago. They had almost 3,000 pounds, almost a ton and a half of properly dried, manicured weed ready. A ton and a half on the property and 20,000 plants.
That's crazy. They're all like human trafficking too. It's really terrible.
Look, there's only 4 million people in this whole state.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not growing it for Oregonians, I can tell you that. California's got a shitload of growers. So we must be going back to the Midwest. Gee, where have I heard that story? Let's see, 1976, going to Chicago. Yeah, I think I know that story. You know, stay out of the South, avoid Texas at all costs. And if you can get it to New York, man, you're home free. If you got the context. Yeah, New York's the big money, and you're in the Big Apple. Stupid money. Think about it. A pound sold for what a new Honda cost at that time.
I mean, just when oh, you're talking about in the past.
Yeah.
Oh,
a pound of Thai sticks was $3,200, and $3,200 would buy you a Honda Civic right off the lot with no pinstriping. You got to pay extra for that, but you know, you get the idea. Or the rims. Or did you want a sound system? You know, that's extra, but you know what I'm saying. So a pound of weed today, that'd be $11,500. Imagine that.
Oh my God, good old inflation.
Yeah, that's what, like,
$11,000.
that's like 700 an ounce, isn't it? I don't know. It's too crazy to even try to comprehend.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Stoners will pay anything. Well, today's market is cannabis consumers. Okay. And that's a different market than the generation I came out of, because we were true cannabis abusers. I mean, we smoked a lot of weed. Our goal was to find a better weed than the last bowl we had. And to that, it became a lifelong pursuit.
Mm.
So money wasn't an object, because money is, you know, sometimes you have good times and bad money, and sometimes you have bad times and good money. You know what I mean? It's the two never seem to, or at least in my world. I mean, it was either feast or famine on both, you know, paradigms. So, but it's different. Today's person wants, like Fume said, they want to walk into a dispensary and talk to the most unemployable person on the face of the earth, a bud tender. So what do I do for this pimple on my ass? Oh, well, you want the, you know, the candy pinstriper. Oh, okay. You know, and they, can I get that in a cartridge? Oh, yes, sir. We, you know, so anyway, it's not the same thing as getting a bag of really good weed.
Dude, everyone knows the pimple on the ass issue is solved by smoking more purple punch. That's the way.
Yeah, right. Or a purple Urkel or something, you know, or I don't know.
What do you think about using aloe vera in your garden?
Actually, I claim responsibility for bringing that to the party several years ago. As a matter of fact, Jeremy at Build a Soil, he built the entire company on selling aloe vera powder. At one time, aloe vera powder, that one SKU item in his business, paid he told me that. He shared that with me. That paid his entire payroll, was just the aloe vera powder. Now, if I lived where you lived, where you have better weather, because it came out of Egypt and then went to India, but that's the history on it. I would be growing like big outdoor plants. You can't have too much aloe vera.
I tried growing aloe vera in ground out here. I got too cold.
Yeah, okay. That's the problem. You got to move it. You got to either put a hoop over it or move it into it. You got to protect against cold. But for your own home, because like you want it in your kitchen. So if you get a burn or you get a cut, you want to be able to cut a piece of the leaf off. And I swear to God, if you say this happened to me, this is a real life situation. I was cooking something in a cast iron Dutch oven and I wasn't thinking, and I grabbed the handle and I grabbed it hard because I was going to lift it. And so, I really got my whole hand, and I had aloe vera and I put it on there. It never even gave me a welt. And the sting was gone in a matter of let's say a minute. There was absolutely no pain whatsoever. And if you go into any pharmacy, and whether you had a prescription in your hand or an over-the-counter product, it's for your skin, I promise you, it has salicylic acid, if not aloe vera, in the formula. It's that ubiquitous. And so it's one of the best. It's the first plant that the human race domesticated. The Egyptians used it in the mummification process. They would rub the body down with aloe vera gel, the inside of the plant, and that would protect. They weren't microbiologists, but this is what it did, is that the antibacterial properties protected the corpse from rotting before they could finish the entire mummification process. And so then the plant went to India, which historically been one of the main epicenters of plant distribution via the Silk Road, and then much later, the spice route. So it's been a trader of plants, for millennia. In modern day Afghanistan was at the turn of the last century, was considered part of India. The Maharajas, the guys with the big beards and the turbans and all that stuff. And they were the ones that kept Rolls-Royce alive, because they were the biggest customer of Rolls-Royce luxury cars in the 20s and 30s. Because, if they could own 10 or 12, that showed they had more money than the Maharaja in the next district, who only had 6 or, whatever kind of thing. So, yeah.
So how do you like to use aloe vera in your garden? What stages do you like to use it at?
All stages. I start from cloning, because aloe vera contains, as well, we already talked about, salicylic acid. And so if you take a piece of the leaf off, let's say you're going to do 6 cuts. How's that? So we'll say, okay, so take a piece about, 4 or 5 inches long, and cut off the spikes on each side of the frond. Okay, so now you've got the gel exposed on 4 sides, and take the blunt end of a shish kebab stick and push in 6 holes around inside the gel. Then take your cuts and you pop them in that gel and let them sit overnight, or maybe even 24 hours, and now remove them and put them in whatever system you use. I don't care. That doesn't mean anything. That right there will sterilize, in a good way, pasteurize, that's a better word. It will pasteurize that clone, prevent it from getting infected. It provides antiviral protection, antibacterial, pathogenic fungi. It's a wonder drug. That's the basis of aspirin, is salicylic acid.
So you know what I've been doing? I've been making willow water. I've been boiling willow in water and then sticking my cuts in that. Just because
Well, it's the same compound. I'm just saying, yeah, willows.
Oh.
That's how Dr. Bayer, who invented Bayer aspirin, when he started it back in 1880, he was getting the salicylic acid from willow shoots.
I thought the willow shoot was more rich in the indole-butyric acid.
That could be, but
Okay.
I know that Bayer was not aware of aloe vera because the amount of aloe vera, and you can buy, if you wanted to get a kilo of aloe vera, it's only $50 from a lab supply house. That's a pharmaceutical grade salicylic acid. That's what commercial nurseries buy, because 1 kilo will make 55 gallons of rooting gel. Can you imagine that?
You have to, I've looked into this a little bit, and you have to because the compound isn't water soluble, you have to dilute it in ethanol, right? You have to dissolve it in ethanol before you dilute it. Isn't that correct? So it's not water soluble, salicylic acid? That could be confusing.
Yeah, okay, check this out. It's Phyto, PHYTO. Phyto.
It's what the Phytotech
Steve, help
Labs.
me out.
You're talking
Yeah,
about Phytotech.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and they sell all kinds of compounds, but they also, one of them they sell is salicylic acid for like $50 a kilo. And they would be able to answer, because I don't want to mislead you, but that would be my source if I were going to buy it again.
Let me see if I can look at it.
I mean, that's pretty cheap rooting agent,
Yeah, for sure. I'm big on making ferments. I'm a big ferment nerd and just
sure.
nerd and stuff. So I like making my things, and also I would feel like I'm somehow cheating buying pure compounds like this.
I know.
I see that there's pure tricontinol in here too.
Yes. That costs more than God ever intended too.
The molecular structure thing, I'm looking at it on here. But it's just like, it just seems like such a cheat. Like you're just cheating. Like what a cheat code.
Well,
but I mean,
I was the one several years ago, probably about 10 years ago, that started talking about using aloe vera to root. And I've always used that because we have a lot of Mexican, and you do too down in your part of the Mexican markets. And they always have aloe vera leaves. So even if my situation, because it's too cold up here near Portland, so I just buy the leaves from the store, and they're like under $2. And my God, that's like 3 weeks of use for me. And I will tell you that when I use aloe vera and then make a tea out of the gel, the outside isn't harmful. I'm not saying that, but it has a lot of polysaccharides. And if that's why it's not good for humans to eat it or give it to an animal, because as the British say, it gives you the winds, okay? Because it doesn't, your body can't break it down. It's cellulose, it's polysaccharides, right? So, but the gel inside, because it's a forerunner of aspirin, if you have a headache and you consume like a tablespoon or whatever of aloe vera gel, your headache's gone in a matter of a few minutes. It's that fast acting. And so we can mix it in water and break it down and then apply it to the soil in our plants. I mean, it's like a steroid. The plants just go bam.
I use it a lot in like the vegetative periods. I'll buy the big long spears, the leaves or stakes, they might call them, and I just blend the whole thing up, and then I run it through a strainer to get all the pulp out, and just add that to my post compost tea brew. I add it at the end of a compost tea brew for like the salicylic acid and the oxidant and the amino acid profile. I also use it in my smoothies and stuff like that too. You had mentioned polysaccharides. I'm like, that's like kind of the thing I'm like nerding out on right now. It's like the use of polysaccharides in compost tea brewing and in like soil biology to maximize the diversity of biology.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what you thought about that.
Well, I'm a little confused. I mean, the role of chitin, as an example, seems to be a little bit misunderstood. The
Okay.
chitin in and of itself is really, it's a moot point. Okay, chitin is an acetyl form of glucosamine. Okay.
Okay.
So and the only thing that can break down that type of compound is fungi. And
Okay.
bacteria, in its feeble attempt to break it down, produce a enzyme called chitinase. In fact, there's a commercial product called chitosan, and that's how it's manufactured. They take chitin and put it into water and add this bacteria, and then they collect the chitinase and bottle it and sell it as why? Because the chitinase, the enzyme, destroys eggshells. So that's really important in adding it to your soil to kill soil-borne insects, invaders, if you will. It can also be used effectively as a spray, but it isn't the chitin itself. It's the bacterial action on the chitin that gives you the chitinase. But here's another big step that'll really help you in your research. And I mean this sincerely. Okay, Dr. Albert Hoffman, the man who discovered, whatever term you want to use, LSD, he graduated from Cologne University at the age of 22 with a PhD in chemistry because he had broke the code on chitin and discovered the molecular structure, not the formula, but the structure. Chitin is used in surgical thread, both internal and external, to sew you up. If you got your teeth pulled or tooth pulled or something, they would sew up the. And the reason that chitin is good is that it prevents infection and helps it heal faster, so they can heal before infection sets in. And it's still used today. It's not the only surgical thread, but it's still it's traditional, definitely. It goes back to 1880s. So this isn't anything new. And Hoffman, that was so important that Sandoz Laboratory hired him on graduation with a PhD and put him in Switzerland at their headquarters. And he was working on a cure for migraine headaches. And he had these packs of rye molds that he had grown the rye and collected the molds and isolated them and packed. He had gone through packs 1 through 24 and put it away for several months or even maybe a couple of years. And then one rainy night in his study pulled out pack 25. And that's how the name LSD 25 came. It was the 25th pack. That's the only thing it means. So if you want to read it, but anyway, yeah, if you want to read a really good book, read LSD, My Problem Child by Albert Hoffman.
Okay.
I mean, he was there, and I mean, it's a really good book. And he was also the man who studied the first samples of psilocybin mushrooms out of Oaxaca, and he actually gave the name to the two compounds, psilocin and psilocybin. So that's pretty amazing. I mean, he was involved in LSD in the late 30s and early 40s. And then in 58, he was the guy that looked at the mushrooms and said, here's your compounds, they're beta glucans. It's psilocybin and then psilocin. Right? So,
Mushroom polysaccharide.
Yeah.
Oh, what's going on here? Oh, okay. So I put together this composty food source thing that I'm working on with all 5 different categories of polysaccharides, from mushrooms, plant matter, cellulose, starch, algae, and insects, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I try to find that break down those polysaccharides. One of them that I use fermented soybeans for the chitinase to add to the composty brew to kind of help it break down so that the biology can create that diversity. Does that make sense to you? Do I have something you kind of?
Well, I don't understand. I mean, again, we got to go back to what chitin is.
Uh-huh.
Is it okay? Is the soybean giving you chitinase or chitin?
Chinese.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
now I do. Because the other thing that might,
Grass with my chitin source.
oh, okay, yeah, now I get it. Okay.
And mushroom. I'm using mushroom extracts also. So I'm using mushroom
Okay.
extract grass as my chitin source, and then I'm using fermented soybean meal. And usually I don't.
Okay, now it makes sense. Now it makes sense. Because I was understanding how adding chitin would do anything, but chitinase is a whole different. Because yes, it's a powerful pesticide. And that's why it's also effective as a foliar spray. You know, so your product could be used as a foliar spray, and yeah, absolutely. Okay. Because if there's an important, not a concept, but a truth in our bodies, we call it an immune system. In plants, it's referred to as a pathway. And the chitinase hyphen salicylic acid pathway is it's like the white blood cell pathway immune system is in our bodies. That's how important chitinase is. So if you isolated that phrase, chitinase hyphen salicylic acid, I think get some information that will really help you make the decision that you want, that would be helpful to your project.
So I'm using I'm using the aloe vera.
Oh yeah, absolutely, great.
So I just use sometimes I feel like I'm going way overboard with my super complicated compost teas, but my plants just raged this season.
Well, good.
So it's working. It works really well. Although my biggest problem was that I way outgrew my pots. I way pushed the limits of my 400-gallon pots. I was root bound mid-July.
Yeah.
So I started seeing a little bit of yellowing kind of early on, and had to problem solve that. Added some amino acids. I went and
we can imagine what people are growing 800-gallon smart pots buried. Okay, so they bury them in the ground to reduce evaporation. And the reason that they do them in the smart pots in ground is that they can put 2 or 3 layers of chain link fence, so it acts as a barrier against moles and voles and gophers to some degree. It's an attempt. A hope and a dream is what I call it. But anyway, so then you put in the soil, and they run the soil 4 or 5 years without none of this fresh soil bullshit, and they hit it with cover crops after harvest. Put in some the mixes that have hairy vetch and clover and some beans. They're usually 10 or 12. What's that?
So things you'll never get out of the environment ever again.
No, I meant the seeds.
Yeah. Never mind. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Are they re-amending? Are they doing they're doing no-till and just top dressing their amendments and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're living on what do you call it? Oh yeah, the microbiology, which really never mind. That's almost philosophical. I don't want to go there. But there's more to the soil biology than usually gets discussed, and the diversity that you establish, the tearing up of the soil for what reason? Well, I want my soil to be fresh. I go to ancient forests. You know how old that soil is?
Right.
Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah, the whole compaction issue I think can be solved with destroying it with tractors, right?
Yeah,
you can plants in them.
There's a group of family farms over in Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington called Shepherd's Grain, and they practice legitimate no-till, sustainable agricultural practice. And then in the wintertime, they plant garbanzo beans, and they grow organic garbanzo beans on the land because they're a legume, so they set nitrogen in the soil. So when they replant in the spring with the barley seed, or excuse me, wheat seeds, so they're getting 2 crops. They're getting a crop of organic garbanzo beans, which are like gold because every culture uses them. It's the most widely grown legume in the world. and then they're getting this incredible flour that they have milled under the Shepherd's Grain label. And yeah, it has like a yellowish color to the flour. It's not white like it's been bleached with Clorox or something, you know. So it like looks like a food when you bake a nice loaf of bread or something, you know.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You'll have to look into that.
But so when people say to me, well, you can't do it on a big scale, how much bigger do you get than, you know, a 3,000 acre wheat farm?
So I did what you suggested, and I looked up the relationship between chitinase, salicylic acid, and it pops up here that jasmonic acid plays a big role in, you know, there's these three compounds really interact with each other really well. And I use a lot of jasmonic acid. It's, you know, I was talking about it earlier in the show.
Good. What source how are you getting it? Or what source do you use?
So I'm fermenting premature blackberries.
Okay.
You ever heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're the scourge of people in Portland. Invasive as shit, man. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Anything to eradicate them sounds good to me.
Yeah. Yeah. The property I'm on is surrounded by myself and you know, a friend. We went like a 5-gallon bucket and fermented it.
Oh, cool.
Yep. Okay. He brought up some jasmonic acid. So that's really interesting. So like there was this interaction between these three compounds I didn't even really know, and I was just using all three of them. I'll have to do some research.
That's great. Now you got all the tools. If you got the germanic acid, the aloe vera is going to give you the salicylic acid. Mm-hmm. And remember, it's a nutrient accumulator. So you're not just getting salicylic acid, you're getting a full range of probably 90 elements. In terms of compounds, I would imagine at least 250, at least.
Awesome. Oh, cool.
So in there, you're going to have terpenes, terpenoids, triterpenoids, et cetera, et cetera.
Very nice. Oh, this is gold. This is great. It's like it destroys a bunch of pathogens.
Yes. So you can see by using these tools that we can create an incredibly healthy soil so that the plant can focus on producing biomass, which is what plants do.
Barley has a lot of jasmonic acid.
Really?
I would imagine, yeah. I have a paper written by a PhD candidate in Norway. So it's her entire dissertation. And I'll have to send it to you because it is one of the most thorough pieces on barley as it relates to brewing, but we can take those truisms and apply it to botany or soil biology at least. Mm-hmm. And it's my opinion, and partly because I really introduced it to the cannabis scene, I think it's one of the most important things we can use in our gardens is aloe vera juice. And don't buy the bottle shit. Go to a Mexican market. Give them, you know, Asian markets usually carry them too. Certainly the Thai and Cambodian and Vietnamese, not so much the Chinese maybe, but you get the idea. You can get them.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, that's what I do. I go to the Mexican market in Medford.
You're dancing.
Now it's going to be sold out.
And for anyone that doesn't know what this is Dr. Duke's phytochemical and ethnobotanical database. You can use it to find all kinds of cool stuff, plant hormones, auxins.
We used to, back in the day at IC Mag when we all got started. Now they're all, you know, consultants and shit. And we were just posters. Kim Wilson and I used to argue tooth and nail, and he was our go-to guy, the Dr. Dukes. There's a program at Department of Agriculture called ARS. That stands for Agriculture Research Station. So let's say in the state of Kansas, we'll say, where wheat might be a big crop, the Department of Agriculture would put one of their employees at the University of Kansas, if that's the school or the agricultural school, right? And they're there not to teach, they're there to assist the teaching staff of that department for the rest of the state. So they have it's called the ARS. And Dr. Duke was, he ran the ARS at the University of Missouri. That's how that got started. And then when he retired, I don't know how it worked out, but someone else got a hold of it in a good way. And they didn't steal it. So put it in a form that's more readable like it is now. It wasn't always as readable as it is now. So on that note, University of Oregon, which is, it's unusual. Every state almost has an ARS for agriculture, right? Because every state does something, maybe not. Yeah, they got an agriculture research station. University of Oregon has one for agriculture and has one for horticulture. So they have one that for horticulture is to assist the wholesale nursery sector on how to maximize profits, increase soil tilth, things like that. And I mean, there's some real experts in those organizations. These aren't flukes. These aren't, hey, last week I was a soil biologist and this week I'm going to be a cannabis, consultant. Oh, okay. What are you going to do next week? That kind of thing.
Right. I'm a master grower this week.
Yeah. I want to be a master grower, whatever that means.
Get a hat, make it official.
Yeah. Yeah. I think seriously with a question mark would be a good name for a company.
Yeah, that's
seriously.
Hey, so are you very familiar with Korean natural farming techniques?
I didn't know it until I talked to Mr. Trump.
Ms. Trump?
On this show as well as Fumidor show. And what he helped me learn is that it all came from Fukuoka, the one straw revolution.
Okay.
From Japan.
Yes, from from what I understand, it's from like the rice empire days, when like all the competing, rice empires were developing techniques and stuff for low cost farming.
But yeah, I mean, he was the first one that created the seed bombs, where you pack them with mud and seeds, and then when it comes time to plant, you throw the balls out into the field. They do the same thing in India, except they load the mud with and manure. I forgot the manure. With neem seed meal, and then put the seeds in, let it dry. And so then when it's time to plant in the spring or whatever, after the monsoons, they throw the balls out of the back of a truck. And there you go. You got your field. So there's a lot of it. So the Japanese is based a lot on the Indian. The Indian we can date that back to the Ayurvedic, which predates the Hindu era. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, all this stuff is, that's what Mr. Trump and I were talking about. Mm-hmm. You can trace a lot of these back to all kinds of cultures, Chinese, Indian, down southeast, modern day Thailand. You got, what was at one time 1,200 Buddhist temples. They know a thing or two about farming. They were self-supporting. Think about that. 1,200 monasteries.
The Romans were using lactobacillus ferments also.
Yeah. So, and I was familiar more with Gil Corendang in the late 90s from the Philippines. He'd had almost identical recipes, like calcium phosphate. So you take your eggshells and you heat them up and you char them till they're black. Then you grind them in, I think it's vinegar. I think that's it. Anyway, so you not only get the calcium from the eggshells, because most of it's calcium carbonate, but there is some phosphorus, and that gets converted to calcium, or bonded and becomes calcium phosphate. So some of those recipes, I did them all. I couldn't handle the smell of, I don't care how much you clean the eggs. They smell like shit when you get them on the barbecue, and you're trying to.
Got to get all that film off of it. It's
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think there's a lot of value. I tell you though, and I don't mean this, I mean it's in the most sincere way. Once I learned how to really do worm castings the right way, it takes a couple of years to really get it down. Shit's magical.
Oh yeah. I use earthworm castings more than anything else.
Yeah, it's just fucking magical. If
I've
you can get
actually-
up, if you can get up to Portland,
Mhm.
I got a source. There's only 4 people on the entire West Coast that I would buy from. And I was his first customer that answered his, what's it called? The new online newspaper where you put ads to sell shit.
Craigslist?
Thank you. I was the
Oh.
first guy to answer his Craigslist and went there. He says, bring a bucket.
Classifieds. I couldn't even think of the word. It used to, before Craigslist, it was classifieds.
Oh,
Craigslist murdered classifieds. Remember, you used to actually have to pay to run classifieds, and then you had to buy a newspaper to look at the
geez.
classifieds. You look
Yeah.
at the back of the class. Oh, there's cars.
He's a great
That was
man.
like
Gil
1,000 years ago.
Carendez, I like him because he's not trying to get rich. He works in third world countries trying to help people increase food production and nutritional value. That's really important. And things, I like the whole idea of making your own fertilizers. Whatever you want to call them. Yeah, I think that's a way to go. I don't have much. Hey, scroll back up a little bit there, Steve. No, the other way. Okay, I think I saw Steve Diver's name. No, keep going. No, the other way. Yeah, there it is, Steve Diver. I did a show with him. It's pretty interesting. He used to be with a group called ATRA that we're part of the United States Department of Agriculture. And they're this sub-agency, if you will, would help farmers move from conventional through transitional to final certified organic. And he headed up that office. Now he's at the University of Kentucky, heading up the cannabis research, cannabis and hemp. I think more hemp than cannabis, but.
Hey, Coot, what was the name of that earthworm casting producer that you were just talking about?
Northwest Redworm in Camas. Hope that's the right way to pronounce it. Camas, Washington. It's right across the river.
Sweet. Cool. Good stuff.
They're the kind.
Are you familiar with the ferment called, they call it Oriental Herbal Nutrient?
No, but I wouldn't read much into that.
Yeah, so it's a combination of tinctures from garlic, licorice.
Oh, wow.
Ginger. Okay, it's garlic, licorice, ginger, cinnamon bark, and angelica root. They ferment and tincture each one of them separately, and then mix them all together. And they use that as an anti-pathogenic in the KNF system.
Oh, okay. No, I'm not.
You're not familiar with it?
No, I always get a lot of criticism on this, and it's almost become comical. I use something that's been used in agriculture for 6,000 years, and up until a few months ago, I didn't realize it's worse than Roundup. Poison worse than Roundup. Oh yeah.
What's worse?
He's being sarcastic.
Neem meal.
Oh,
Neem meal. Yeah, it causes inverted nipples, distended rectum, lesions on your brain.
Isn't that the what is it called?
Azadirachtin.
Azadirachtin. Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Yeah, the killer, the worse than glyphosate.
There is a problem with those extracts, and Steve and I talked about it on another show.
Okay.
Those are manufactured products. Azatrol and Azatron. Azatrol and Azamax, I guess, were the two. One was General Hydroponics. The other was at gentleman at Advanced Nutrients. Big boy Mike. Yeah. Hangs out with child molesters. So those are made with solvents. Well, duh.
With alcohol. Yeah.
No, I mean like real solvents, the real thing.
Oh, we're talking about the azotrol.
Those two products, they make them in India.
Azagard, Azamax.
What is it?
Azamax, Azotrol, anything with the word in the fertilizer world, around this globe, the word AZA means that it's an azadirachtin extract. So all these two remote companies did was buy some Aza out of India, God knows from who, and rebadged it as Azotrol, and the other one is Azamax. That's how the fertilizer industry works. That's a far different cry from organically pressed neem seed meal. You know, once you, like any seed, once you press the oil out, you're left with cake or meal. So soybean meal is, they press the oil out for making fuel or whatever. You're left with soybean meal. That's true of everyone except for alfalfa. You're not pressing oil out of alfalfa seeds, for Christ's sake. The cost would be prohibitive. Can you imagine what 3 tons of goddamn alfalfa seeds would cost? You'd get what? You couldn't even get a 55-gallon barrel. You know, but anyway, you get the idea. So that's what neem is. Once you
That's
press
going to be the
oil.
new dabbing trend, Coot. They're going to be dabbing that in Puffco's. They're going to be dabbing the alfalfa oil. Full gram dabs, bro.
I just got to get a TikTok account. I think that's it. If I get an Android phone and a TikTok account, I'll be cool, you know. But anyway, so the oil, I buy organic oil out of India. And the oil, once the oil is pressed, then this meal is collected, and that's the meal. And it provides levels of protection in your soil that Steve asked me one time, well, what do you do about, I think it was gnats or something, soil gnats, or I don't know, root gnats, or whatever the fuck it was. I said, I don't. I've never had them. I put neem. Yeah, I put a cup of neem in. I put the same amount of kelp as kelp, 1 cup in a cubic foot, 120 cups. There's 1 cup of neem. This had to be really powerful stuff. It would, if it, you know, we're gonna like kill you.
So you're using the oil?
I use the oil on the leaves, yeah, during veg,
Okay.
to eradicate the usual mites.
Okay.
You know Oregon. There's more
Right.
fucking mites in this state. They should make that the state animal.
The Spider-Man.
Yeah.
We can get into Spider-Man.
It's from the nurseries. I mean, that's the, okay, everybody, look, they're here. It's perfect conditions. You got agriculture, you got horticulture, you got stoners. I mean, there's a whole mix of people that are contributing to the issue. So it's unfair of me to say, well, it's these guys. It's everybody. But yeah, if you're going to grow here, I don't care if it's a personal garden, or I don't care if you're, you know, Johnny Whiplash doing 40,000 square feet, you're going to be dealing with mites on some level. And there's big money in mites. I mean, that's where consultants make their big money. Oh, well, we'll have to try this other one. You know, it could have been, they might be hybrids. So we'll try this concoction. You know, good luck. Have at it.
You'd think they'd be able to identify them properly the first time.
Hey, look, if it were that easy, companies like Monrovia that has a 1,000 acre nursery here, and they around the country totally have 8,000 acres. You don't think if it weren't a snap of the fingers, they wouldn't have figured it out? Do you know how many PhDs they have on staff at between, was it 9 locations around the world? So I was telling a friend, in 1 week, they do 8,000 to 10,000 cuts.
Wow.
With less fanfare than a typical grower does trying to get his 6 for his next cycle. 8 to 10,000 a week. That's a lot of cuts.
I'm getting kind of tired, Mr. Coot. It's about, I gotta get to the farm in the AM. I think I'm about ready to wrap it up.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Let me pull up your Instagram again real quick. Why don't you tell everybody how to find you and the content that you create, because you do quite a bit.
Yeah, so you can find the Facebook group that I started, the Regeneration Earth by Skunk Magazine. I'm also administrator for the Organic Cultivators Group, the Probiotic Farmers Alliance, and moderate for the KNF group. Those are the I don't know if I said organic cultivators or not. Those are like the biggest ones that that I administrate for. You can find me on Instagram at Luna All Day with 1A, so LUNALLDAY. Yeah, my articles are on Skunk, skunkmagazine.com, under my author name, Luna Whitcomb, my name. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Well, thank you so
Great
much.
meeting you. Great
Yeah,
meeting
you too, Coot. Yeah, find me on social media or something. Let's stay connected.
you. Absolutely. I've got some papers. I have a whole book written by 4 PhDs from India just on the subject of salicylic acid. So there's a lot of discussion on its relationship with the chitinase and every plant produces chitinase. Every plant produces salicylic acid. But what we're doing here when we use aloe vera juice in the soil, we'll say, for example, is that we're adding additional saponins. So we're adding things into the soil that's keeping the roots clean and moving elements that may have been lodged into a zone where other roots can get it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of factors that I think you'd find interesting. And so it's in a it's in a PDF format. So I'll get that to you. And I think it would give you some other considerations, and to bolster up what you're already doing. In other words,
Fantastic.
I like the germanic acid. So
yeah, I appreciate all of your help and your knowledge and your insights on stuff. It was really great getting to talk to you.
Oh, me too. I really enjoyed talking with you tonight. A lot of fun.
Excellent. Well, yeah,
Thanks
have a good night. Thank you, Steve and Fumi for letting me on your show, and do it again if you want me to.
Oh yeah, we'd love to have you on, and definitely check out Fumi's show too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, should come on our show. We like to talk about this kind of stuff and more.
Sweet. Yeah, I'd love to.
Right on.
Sweet.
Have a good night, gentlemen.
Good night.
Awesome. Well,
See, I told you, aloe vera, man. You want a great plant. You want one healthy. You want the soil biology kicking. Stay away from swill. Aloe vera leaves, man. Here's the thing. Let's say you're a commercial grower, and so you go to a commercial produce company, like one of the big ones here in Portland, and you can get a whole case. That's 30 pounds of leaves for $22 out the door. That's a lot, man. If you had a commercial grow, turning that into God, I hate this word, a tea. I mean, it would, by the next morning, you'd be blown away at how your plants had changed overnight. So it's a very inexpensive.
I often forget to bring that up, actually, Coot. Thank you for reminding me and reminding everybody else. And holy cow, like we always talk about barley, and I mentioned it on the show, but aloe is equally, if maybe equally important. Like honestly, maybe not more important, but equally important. You can use it for so many different things. It has its own sort of nutritive effect. At least the plants are always just more happy when you use it. And I've gotten to the point where, luckily for me, I've been growing an aloe plant, or at least now it's several aloe plants basically in one big old pot for the longest time now. It's several years old. So St. Bernard's has mentioned a few times that aloe is actually quite a bit more effective as it matures a bit, I guess. Couple of years or whatever. Anyway, regardless, so my plant is certainly old enough for that, and I can take off entire arms of it basically and blend them, put them in basically the watering medium, water it into the plants, and boom, immediately the plants are happier.
Absolutely.
Over 12 hours. But it is actually really cheap at like Asian markets. They pick it up for like $1 a stock. You don't have to buy a whole case. You know what I'm talking about, like here on 82nd, like the Vietnamese markets, Hong Kong.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Every big town has the Vietnamese or Korean or Maybe not
The other
Korean,
day-
but like Vietnamese, Southeast Asian.
Yeah, the other day we were with a big Korean chain, H Mart, over in Tigard, and there's one downtown. I don't know if it's as
I
well
haven't been there
equipped.
yet. How is it?
Oh, it's wonderful.
Is it?
But and that's not really part of a Korean, but it's they have a lot of Asian products that aren't necessarily Korean. And they had them there for $1.75. Any Mexican market of any size that has what's the word? Oh no, what's the word for a Mexican market?
Of course,
I can't think of it right now. But anyway, they have them there because you want to keep it in your kitchen, man. If you get burned or cut, and you get that aloe vera on there, and we're on your way to healing.
Mm.
You're not going to have a sore finger for the next month while it gets infected, and every time you bump it, your arm shakes or something. So yeah, in Mexican homes, it's not uncommon to have them a plant in the kitchen just for that purpose. And yeah, they do well indoors. You want to get them near a window, and during the summer, then put them out on the deck and let them get. But you can put them in the house. Have them on your deck so that if you need, there's emergency, your dog or something or yourself, get cut or hurt or a sting, an animal.
They grow super well. Yeah, and aloe vera plants. I mean, they grow so well that they can become like a whole gift thing. Because like that plant that I have, I've put they pup basically. Like aloe plants are so good with this kind of rooting. That's just their whole spiel basically. Because they root really well and they basically like sustain the plants among like it's like one big old clone basically that pups off new plants basically. Do they ever actually flower? Because I haven't seen mine flower. I presume that they probably flower in nature.
It comes down to cultivar. There's I might be wrong on this, but I believe that there's 155, something like that, around the world. But here's the most important part of it is that as things turn out, it doesn't matter which one you use. And for this purpose, there may be different in terms of the decor, in your garden, because there's some really oddball ones that, but for the actual gel, which is what we want, it doesn't matter. So, yeah, some of the ones in Hawaii are so big, they actually fall over on their side and they grow parallel with the ground. And the flower heads get so big, they're taller than you or I. I've seen pictures of people standing in front of them, and the top of that flower head is like 4 or 5 feet above their head. And the leaves are like, thick like a pillow, man. Unreal. So, yeah, if you have an area where you don't get cold, like Southern California, say Laguna Beach on the side of the hill, just water it, or it's not a drought situation like it has been. Yeah, they get monster.
Believe it or not, people always think that they're like a drought plant. They think they're like a desert plant, but they're not actually. They prefer kind of somewhat moisture soil.
Right, they're a lily. That's why the biggest company in America, and they I don't know if they own the fields. They just take the material, but it's down in the Rio Grande Valley. That's the epicenter of aloe vera production in the United States. And anyway, the name of the company or their product line is the Lily of the Desert. And that's how they come up with the lily, because they are a lily. So that's why the name of the Lily of the Desert. And they have organic, in gallon bottles for not much money. So for organic growers, you can keep it in the refrigerator and have a glass yourself once in a while. But you can use that and not have to dick around with getting the leaves and going through that. I mean, look, it's going to be better. Don't get me wrong. Anything that you can get fresh off the vine is going to be have more of an impact. But it's the next one down. How's that? So we can buy that by the gallon for, I think it's like $15, $16. And that's a lot of, because you don't mix a lot. It's not a high dose situation.
What do you think is better, Coot? Do you think bottled or fresh is better? All things considered.
Fresh, always fresh. Because there's too many compounds. I don't care if it's in a bottle, it was processed, meaning it was heated, and to kill pathogens. And right there, you're going to deconstruct compounds and deconstruct these very fragile hydrocarbons the terpenes, terpenoids. And so, yeah, it's, yeah. Yeah. So with, if you don't have heat, it's like, okay, here's the difference. What do you think is more healthful? Eating an apple or drinking some apple juice? So it comes down to that.
Unfortunately, there's a whole industry about telling people that's actually like a whole problem these days. A lot of people think that juice is healthy, and it turns
Yeah,
out
I
that
know.
juice is extremely unhealthy, whereas fruits
Yeah,
are usually healthy.
as much sugar as Coke.
I think
I
more,
mean,
actually.
when you start reading, you start reading the label. What was it? Okay, here was one the other day. I can't eat them anymore, but I used to like scones, and we made them with craisins, the cranberry raisins. Okay, so a serving, you ready for this, is 28 grams, so an ounce. Fair enough. The sugar level was 26 grams out of 28.
Hmm.
And 24 of those 26 were sugar added. Now, here's the thing. Very few people, they'd eat like a raw, dried cranberry one time, and that'd be the end of it, It's too tank or too sour, whatever. So they have to doctor it up with equal amounts of sugar. Is that actually, it blows my mind.
I'm annoyed every time I try to buy dried fruit and it's like half sugar.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I tell you, man, I dropped major, diabetics are measured in A1C, which goes back 90 days. They follow your blood sugars. Like they don't give a shit about what you got this morning, The A1C is 90 days, and then that's the, do or die. But yeah, I've dropped almost 3 points, which is like unreal without insulin. So, and that just by not eating sugar anymore. No coffee. I drink coffee without sugar. Can you imagine that? First time in my life. I don't eat any breads, anything that's white, rice, bread, sugar. I don't buy anything with sugar added to it. So yeah, it's amazing.
There was actually something just today. I just saw something today. The last few days, there's been a bunch of new stories about Alzheimer's. They've been calling it effectively diabetes type 3. And I guess there's new information for that. Essentially, lifetimes of excessive sugar consumption. Speaking of polysaccharides and stuff, it was complex sugars, I guess. Unfortunately, alcohol was contributing to it, but also in large part, sugar apparently contributes to Alzheimer's. Fascinating, right?
It's I don't think most people appreciate how addictive sugar is. And, one of the big problems for diabetics especially, but is high fructose corn syrup. And so there's a website you can go to and look at food items and see which ones do or do not have this shit. It's an extract, something isolated from a corn kernel, and it's in goddamn saltine crackers. Can you imagine that? Because it's cheaper than sugar. And to add, so instead of granulated sugar made from beets, Monsanto owns that industry completely. If you want good sugar, you got to get Hawaiian, what do you call it? CNH, the sugarcane stuff.
It sounds like a cowboy name, by the way. Tanner Stewart is coming for you. He's going to get you.
Are you getting?
Yeah. I wasn't trying to cut you off, Coot. I just figured I'd throw this up while you're talking.
Have you heard about the one they're doing with the fungi from the people behind the Fantastic Fungi movie?
I haven't, no.
It's a weekend. It's 3 days. Go to Fantastic Fungi and there'll be links. I got their kit when you get like all these videos and PDFs, but even the roster of speakers will blow your mind. You know, from Dr. Andrew Weil to all the heavies in the myco world, and then some. I mean, some really and international, not, you know,
Cool.
nobody trying to make a buck off doing what's that one concentrate the Blue Dragon, is that it? Yeah, they make an extract, psilocybin. It's blue, so it's called Blue Dragon or something. It's like terps or something, or not terps, but dabs.
Yeah, we have I'm just showing the speaker list so far for the upcoming conference, if anyone's wondering. You check that out in November.
God, this guy looks familiar.
He's a Dr. Wilson Leonard. He's written most of the commercial aquaponic cannabis books. He's
Oh,
kind of
never mind.
the main professor out of Australia that did aquaponic research there at I forget which university. Wendy Kornberg, she's super awesome. Victor Labanov is a Swedish microbiologist. Does a lot of research on aquatic plant mineralizing microbes. Thumb Genetics out of Michigan. Sweetwater Aquaponics out of South Africa. Murray Hollam is another big name out of Australia. Kevin McKernan, the genomicist. He was on the show last with episode 247. You can check that out. Dutch Blooms, always fun to have on. Dr. Robert Faust, who's I know you're a big fan of.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's you know, he graduated 54 years ago from with a got his PhD 54 years ago, and in the early 70s, he and Dr. Sen, SENN, the famous marine biologist from Clemson University in South Carolina. He's a big seaweed. He's the one that did all the original work on maxi crop, the first powdered in the 50s. Anyway, by the 70s, he and Dr. Faust, and Dr. Faust was just out of college for a couple, 3 years, maybe, right? They were extracting humic and fulvic acid from seaweed. You imagine that? And you know how few people even knew what fulvic or humic acid was in 1972? I mean, come on. So they were real pioneers. This man knows more about humic and fulvic acid than anybody else you can talk to. He's nothing short of a genius.
That's why we're bringing him on. He had a great talk too. Check out, he's been on the show twice. You can check out both of those episodes. I believe both of them were before episode 100 or 150. So
yeah, he was on with Peter of Future Cannabis Project, and that the guy with the cannabis or the core thing, you know him.
I'm not
Jack,
sure.
you worked with him at one point, or he worked for you, or you worked for him, or
Who?
come on, Fume, help me out here.
I'm at a loss here.
Yeah, in fact, you were on something about money, a bad check.
No, not that I can remember.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess he's a co-host now over there at Final Cut. So anyway, yeah, that's it. Yeah, check your messages.
Oh, I'll check that in a second. We also have Dragonfly Earth Medicine. We have Matthew Gates. We have Coot. We have Chris Trump. We have Caleb from Copy Left Cannabis. I have a cool talk on patenting and all that happy horse shit, and how people can, there's ways that might be able to help people. And then Aquilitas, who's one of the big producers out of Eastern Canada. So we have and Tanner Stewart from Stewart Life, we talked about earlier, also from Canada. So it'd be a lot of fun. Yeah. No, never did business with him, but
Oh, okay.
certainly,
I wasn't,
possible.
anyway, I didn't know what was going on, and I got a call from him, not him, but Peter one day. And next thing I know is I'm on a show with this guy that, ripped my wife and I off for $3,500 so he could start his anal lube company, Mountain Organics or something. So anyway, this guy was on there, and he starts talking shit about sphagnum peat moss, and yeah. So I did my usual. Oh, really? Did you want to talk about the child labor involved in the core business, asshole? No. They shut up immediately. They get off there. I'm going to save
What's
the
the
world.
chances worldwide, Coot, honestly? So you know all about sourcing and everything else, and everybody here has a story about how their particular brand, we don't even have to be specific about brands, their brand, they swear to Jesus, is picked lovingly by monks.
The last 10 virgins
doing it for 15
and,
generations. Yeah, they're masters at their craft. They do it out of passion. They're choir experts. Realistically, I think that the growing industry is bottom on the list of the entire core industry that serves the hanging baskets they sell at big box stores, Target, all the random shit they basically go do, whatever. I can't even think of all the random crap they basically put it into. And then at the very bottom of the list, the stuff that nobody cares about, the stuff that basically has no texture to it anymore. Because remember, the coconut comes in like long fibers, right? So the stuff that basically has no texture anymore, they sweep that shit up off the floor, slap it in a bag, and say, "Hey, shit, that's great, grow me."
Okay,
is that not true?
Yeah, this quality stuff is washed in seawater and loaded with sodium, which is
yeah. There's Fox Farm used to have 3 products. Well, they had more products, but I'm talking about soil. They had, of course, their famous, or shall we say infamous, Fox Farm Ocean Forest. Okay, gag in a bag. All right. Then they had some other crap called Happy Frog. All right. Okay. Then the last one though was the biggest joke of all was Light Warrior. Okay, so what was Light Warrior? Well, it was big pieces of perlite, because as a lot of people know, but not many people in the cannabis trade, perlite, its biggest use is not potting soils. It's used in concrete. It's used for tensile strength. It's used for all kinds of things. And it's used for, for tilt-up buildings. And so if you can go to, I'm not joking either, you can go to the Perlite Institute. There's a fucking Perlite Institute. Okay, and there's a list of all the producers all around the country. Okay, and that size that they had in this product, it was a standard product, just a standard product that any perlite company manufacturer made, and it would sell to a mixing company, cement mixing company. All right, fair enough. So they would take this material and then they would put it in a mixer. Now, when they mix soil, you have dust, and that dust falls to the bottom of the mixer, right? It's called fines. So they would, and those fines they give away, or they throw it away, or they burn it, it's trash, right? So Fox Farm was buying it or getting it for free, and they would mix it in. So there are these specks of peat moss in this bag of perlite, right? I'm not joking, guys. And then they'd put in shaking some, I don't know, some crap from Myco applications, some, microhyzal mix of some kind with some this or that, label building. That's all it's there for, is label building. All right. And they were getting $19 a bag for this shit called Light Warrior. And I swear to God, you could get 2 yards, a 2-yard sack for under $100 from a perlite manufacturer. And you want fines? You want fines? Yeah, go to any mixing house and they'll have it bagged for you. They'll be thankful. Thank you, sir. Come back. So anyway, they came up with this mix. You took a bag of Fox Farm Ocean Forest. You took a bag of Happy Frog and a bag of this Light War, and you mixed them together, and it was called the Moonshine Mix. And so I got a timeout like 3 days or something over at IC Mag and they had this guy, he was a factory rep. And he was a poster at IC Mag. And I just said something like, hey, Thumbdick, did you guys come back from a big late night party at a Mexican restaurant and you got all liquored up and come up with this shit? This, magical mix. And man, Gypsy and Yvonne bounced my ass out, telling me that I need advertisers, not you. So, you get a timeout. So that wasn't my last one. All right. Actually, it wasn't even my first one. Yeah, I'm pissed off. What was his name? Oh yeah, Sam.
People don't think of you as a pugilist. They think of you as like a nice soil guy. But yeah, you and Breeder Steve and a few other guys, you like to mix it up, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was laughing in your forum the other day. Somebody said something about an OG from 1913, and I said, Jesus Christ, 1913. Most of the OGs that I knew were retired, but yeah, I guess it's all perspective, right? He was the first guy to have, cookies in our town or something, or, I want to go to a big CannaCon.
Oh, we were just joking about how fun it would be to just follow you around with a camera at BizCon and just watch you your reaction to everything would just be great.
Yeah, I went to one of those here in Portland called Indo Expo, I think it was. And they had it out really nice venue and all that shit. And everybody had their phone on or their microphone, like they were in a order window at a, Big Mac or something, or McDonald's, would you like shake with that fries, sir? And everybody's barking out bigger, better, faster, microbes and enzymes and just, horse shit after horse shit. It was like, okay, one of my first experiences with a really heavy psychedelic was like, say, 68, I guess. So several years ago. And we ate a whole bunch of mushrooms. We had no idea. Just, I don't know. This looks like a safe amount here. And so we went to a grocery store to get some ice cream. And so you're like punk kids, right? And so we're checking out, and the person doing the checking out said, you better hurry and get to the car before it melts. And so that little bit of impetus, like I had in my mind, we were going to see melted cars. And so I went outside in the parking lot, and sure enough, there were just these puddles of metal liquid. The cars had melted. And she was talking about the ice cream. So I decided right then and there that doing psychedelics and wandering around the public was probably not a sane way to do things. You know what I mean? It's just everything's setting right.
Amusing though, very amusing.
Yeah. I
For
mean,
yourself
Portland
and
would
others,
really
probably.
be a trip.
Yeah.
Hawthorne Boulevard around 28th Street. Yeah, and a summer afternoon would be pretty trippy.
Boardwalks are pretty
Right.
fun.
Boardwalks are kick-ass. Yeah, go to like San Francisco or something, fun. There's some fun ones on the Oregon coast, really tiny towns that like people live here. Jesus. My phone's been dead for the last 40 miles. I don't know what they do for communications.
What is there? You were talking. I did want to mention one other thing we were talking about earlier about buying inputs, especially fruits and stuff like that. You never know what the hell they sprayed that stuff with.
I know.
They can use all different types of stuff that can get your plants, pegged for disqualification. So be careful if you're purchasing anything like that. That's why it's always better to to use stuff that you can source from other people you know, or grow your own inputs.
Yeah. And there's other things. I mean, even, I came up with this 12 years ago. I said 10 the other night. I was wrong. It was 12 years ago. I first posted it at IC Mag. And it became known as a Coot's Fix-It Mix. In a 5-gallon bucket of water, a cup of alfalfa meal, and a 1/4 cup of kelp. And that was it. And let it sit overnight, stir it with a stick every once in a while, because there's a lot of saponins in alfalfa and you get a big bubbly mess. And next morning, just stir it and then hit your plants. I mean, I've never seen anybody come back and go, man, it really fucked my plants up. All I ever heard was like, God, I can't believe this. It cost me nothing. Yeah, a 1/4 cup of kelp meal, what does that cost? And a cup of alfalfa meal is like, what, 10 cents? 20 cents a pound, so a cup is half a pound. My God, give me a break. If you're talking 10 cents worth of alfalfa, and all right, let's go big. 50 cents. It isn't, but let me do my math real quick. So a 1/4 cup would be 4 would be a cup and a half. So you're talking $1. Yeah, you're still talking like, maybe 12 cents. So you got 25 cents, we'll say, in a 5-bucket gallon bucket of water, tea. Excuse me, I use the right word, tea. You want to use that word, tea. And have an air bubble, so you can stick a hose in there and bubble it and go, see, it's a tea now. Are we doing extracts these days? Isn't that the new one? We're not doing teas anymore.
I don't know. I haven't kept up with that camp in a while. I've been focused on other stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was always the big argument between people like on my side of the camp that said, how can you make a tea out of something you have no control over the input? There's no nothing. Compost is it's like saying turkey, or it's like saying casserole or sandwich. It doesn't mean anything. And same with vermicompost. It means nothing. You got to know who made it, how it was made, what kind of standards they used. I mean, it's not a one. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Big companies like the Black Soil or Black Gold. Black Gold is a company that started out here in Malala, Oregon. And at one point, the big companies, SunGrow, the people behind Sunshine Mix and what have you, they bought them because they wanted a retail product. And they had enough of a market share that's what they did. And, the rest is history. That was several years ago. So they send out, what do they call them? Requests for proposal, RFPs, all the time, looking for a compost so they can put it in their soil mix. Because they go through a lot, right? And they don't make their own. They send out RFPs to people that have participated in the past. And they send a guy out or a gal, whatever, and they inspect it and go, yeah, it looks like compost to me. It's not that, what I'm saying? It's nothing, but it is something to put on the label. That's all. It may be good, it may not be good. So there's no consistency. There doesn't have to be. There's nothing, there's no law. Hey, look, think about it. If somebody goes to a Home Depot, and they buy a bag of soil and they buy a plant, okay, and they go home and they do something stupid and the plant dies, they come back and they go, hey, my plant died. What's that Home Depot going to do? They're going to give them another plant. They got you back in the store. They weren't making any money on that plant to begin with. So you come back to the store, you're going to buy, $40, $50 worth of shit, right? They didn't have to advertise anywhere. They didn't send you any emails. I mean, here you go, lady, go pick out a plant. I mean, think about it. It's just a way to get you in the store to buy the bags of stuff and the bottles of stuff. That's the way it is. We have one of the oldest nurseries in what many would call downtown Portland at 5050 Southeast Stark. Portland Nursery, 5 acres. Now, when it was built in 1910, it was way out in the country. And now it's, not so far. But can you imagine that big of an acre in the city? That much acreage, and they, I mean, have plants of all kinds. They're not going to get in a squabble with you over a $3 plant. Here you go, sir. You want a succulent? Here you go. Have a nice day. Get you out the door while you got grab a wagon to drag your other stuff that you picked up. Just, I don't know. That's the way it works.
We had a question earlier, and we didn't get to it. What are your thoughts on how, the best way people can increase fungal, percentages in their soil? If they already have a mix that they're using and they're trying to increase the amount of fungal growth.
Oh, barley, aloe vera. All of them are good. All of them are good fungal foods, especially the barley. You're getting plenty of enzymes, but just in terms of my microbes, there's over 200 varieties of bacteria. There's another 150 varieties of fungi. I got to send you this copy. It's like I said, she later got her PhD, but she was a PhD candidate. This was her dissertation, and it covered every aspect of the microbial study of barley as it relates to brewing and beer making, fermenting. So it would really be an adjunct to what you know about KNF, because we're talking about a lot of the same materials. You might find that malting or adding barley malt, I'm just not saying you should, I'm just saying it's worthy of consideration to look at the material to see if that's something that you'd want to do. This is a very thorough book. A dissertation. I mean, it's like a real legitimate PhD, not, oh yeah, I went to Oxfordam U and I got a degree in cloning or something.
I had someone use that on me this week. What's your degree in cannabis growing? Oh, you
Real
have
hard knocks.
degree. Okay. All right. Well, nothing you say is fucking relevant then. Just shut the fuck up.
I know.
I'm
Yeah,
not,
like there's any
PhD in the
university.
streets,
I'm
bro.
not saying that they don't provide a service, but don't argue with me that that's some kind of qualification. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. But yeah, it's not funny. It's actually really fucking annoying. Yeah, I'll talk soil with anybody, but I don't want to talk jibber jabber about. You know what I think? I don't care what you think. Tell me what you know. I'm not interested in I believe or gilly golly gee.
We had an interesting thing on that topic last week with Matthew Gates and Brix about how Brix doesn't make insects magically immune to or plants magically immune to stuff. It's just, it definitely helps with resistance, but there's a lot of ridiculous information being put out lately about.
Oh, I know. It's just
if you have any pests at all, your plants aren't healthy. Really? No, it just means you have pests in your area. Like, that's ridiculous.
One of Jeremy Silva's associates has several years experience growing mushrooms, and he's the go-to guy at the Build a Soil. Kevin is his name. He's the go-to guy if you have a question about the materials they sell for home mycology people. So I bought what's interesting is smaller tents, like in the cannabis trade, are usually 2x2 and then 4 foot tall, for like cloning rooms or that kind of thing. But anyway, this one brand, AC Infinity, I believe, they're known for their fans and exhaust systems and what have you. They make a tent and it's 3x3. So that gives you another, foot on each side, and it's easier to find a 3 foot stainless steel rack than it is a 2 foot, kind of thing. So anyway, so I ordered all that and I got the Infinity exhaust fan, and you get a panel. It's LCD LED or whatever you call it. so you can monitor the room by humidity or temperature. So that's pretty cool. And for mushrooms, that's so anyway, I got all that coming. So I'm just going to go into, I'm going to grow primarily the lion's mane and some other interesting varieties of cordyceps. And, you know, just have the weed people have fun. It's every week there's a new, I heard, somebody told me, I don't give a shit. I mean,
Did you hear about the new magic bullet, Coot? I'm gonna make it
What's
up right
that?
now. It's purple seashells. Everyone is talking about it now. You grind them up and your plants go boom boom. $1,000 out the door. How about it?
That's stupid.
I know I made it up, but
Oh,
I'll tell
people
you.
are always looking for a magic bullet. I find.
Right. It's, you know, you go back to when you wouldn't, because you came from a different culture. But certainly Steve and I, in a previous 2 or 3 generations before that, everybody heard a fucking story about Jack and the Beanstalk. Okay. Everybody heard that goddamn allegory. Everybody. And the moral of the story is, among other things, there's no such thing as a magic bean. Okay, so you learn that when you're 3 or 4 years old. You would think that by the time you got to be an alleged adult, able to vote and buy weapons, right? 18 or 21, whatever it is, that you picked up some smarts along the way. And that not every parade that comes down your street is one that you necessarily want to be involved with. I mean, my God, do you know how many wonderful products that I've been exposed to in my short career that were going to be the end all to be all to save cannabis growing as we know it today? Think about it. Just in your time, you've probably seen what, 20 products? At least.
oh yeah. And how many of them have been pulled for crazy reasons? I mean, does everyone remember the Guardian fiasco? There was millions of dollars worth of weed destroyed because of that.
Oh,
Millions of dollars.
let me tell you, it happened that I was invited to be on Adam Dunn's show. And that was being discussed because it was right here in Oregon where the sample had been turned into. At that time, there were 2 certification agencies, one for recreational, one for medical. And it was the medical lab, the one that was certifying for the medical cannabis, that found that. And do you know what was in this shit? The same one that's in the media right now. The worm medicine. I'm
Don't say it because they'll get a shit. Yeah. That one.
That one. Can you believe that? Okay, so I'm on this program and I had Adam Dunn laughing his ass off because I said, well, I have an opinion. And he says, go ahead, Coot. I said, if I ran a farm and one of my employees, especially a production manager, went to the goddamn green Emerald Cup, whatever, and he pulled some stunt by smoking a bong or a joint with some asshole in a parking lot and agreed to use his shit without having it tested or certified, I'd have it, escorted off the property as soon as I heard about it. I wouldn't even, if you're that stupid, you make your decisions in a parking lot at an Emerald Cup? Really? What a moron. I mean, just how stupid can you be?
That seems rhetorical, Coot, because people can be pretty stupid.
I know, but
have you seen the drivers these days, for example?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm glad I'm old and retired. There it is. Yeah, it's right here in Portland, Oregon. I know the lab. excuse me, I know of the lab. That was a big story.
Dead or fled the country because he disappeared immediately after that shit all went down.
Oh, they were serious. I mean, they were talking really serious criminal prosecution in the state. You know what his defense was? This is it blew my mind. Quote verbatim. I didn't know I had to list everything on the label. Really? You never heard of it, MSDS? You know, come on.
It's one of the weird things about the whole organic, even the organic bottling. You know, like I have to be frank, like, you know, people assume that somehow that's different. I honestly assume that a lot of those are the same, and they fall arguably under the religion of organics. Potent has talked about that lately. I like the way he says it. Actually, that kind of crystals and whatever, the religion of organics, right? They'll tell you stuff like, well, we can't really tell you all of what's in the bottle because of the state of Oregon. Mean state of Oregon is, you know, bad. And we can't tell you, but if wink, there's better stuff in here. And I think to myself, like, since when has a company ever said something like that and it was true? Ever?
Let's get something
It has
straight.
secret horsepower. This car has secret. We can't advertise it on the hood, but it's.
I'm going to give you the fast and
magic
furious
horsepower.
history of organic certification. It all started in 1972 over in a little town in eastern Washington called Elmsburg at a it was a big motel chain. Started with an R. They were all over the country. Not Ramada Inn, something like that. Okay. There was a meeting of people who believed in organic, sustainable agriculture. Talk about a cult. Talking 1971, 1972. There were representatives from Washington, Oregon, California, Idaho. I think that was it. Oh, British Columbia. They formed a group called TILF. And that kind of, you know, moved forward, sort of. And at some point, not because of disagreements, just because of different geographies, different crops, everybody kind of went their own way. And that's how Oregon TILF was formed. That's how CCOF was formed, California Certified Organic Farmers. That's how Washington TILF was formed, whatever the group in Idaho is called or was called, whatever. See what I mean? So they ran along from the late 70s all the way to 2001. There was no federal program. The law had been passed in the waning days of the Clinton administration. But it wasn't until the very early days of the Bush administration, as the law provided, that the USDA NOP National Organic Program, USDA National Organic Program was formed. And guess who they based their laws on? Oregon and Washington. Why? Because we had the highest density of organic farms. We had established protocols for inspections and certification, what have you. In Oregon, it takes 5 years to get your farm certified. You don't get to walk in and go, hey, I quit using ammonium nitrate last week and I'm pissing on my trees. Oh, well, here, sir, we'll give you a certification. You got to go 5 years of soil remediation. They come out and check your soil. Now you're certified organic. That's what OTCO, Oregon TILF Certified Organic, means. I don't know what they do in other states, but that's how it's done here in this state. Okay, so when the federal government set up the NOP, USDA NOP, and they were going to be certifying organic at a national level. You've seen that. It's around a circle with a green and white, and it says USD organic on it. Okay. They had to take into account, you had Oregon TILF, you had certified California organic farmers. You had another group that started in Germany in 1928, Demeter, which was that's your biodynamic farms. That's a whole nother thing. They had their own certification. They have an international certification system. Okay. So it's not that, you know, and then you had people like just, well, I don't believe in that. I'm going to do my own. I'm going to do my own organic because I'm just all groovy and stuff. I mean, you know, God talked to me in series and we sat down, we did some mushrooms and smoked a couple doobies, and she gave me like the input to the universe. Look, certified organic means certified organic. They set up Omri to get rid of consumer products. If you go and look into Omri to their webpage, that's them talking, not me. It says mission statements. We are not a certification agency. We are a listing agency. Our listings come from the work of Oregon and California organic certifiers. Omri doesn't mean anything. It states right on there. You know what you pay for that certification or for that listing? It states right in there. You're charged by how much you sell. Okay. To put that Omri sticker on your box, which the consumer wants to see, right? Because it's all important. And that means it's good. It may or may not. It doesn't mean it's organic. It means that Omri listed it, period. That's all it means. And so the more you make, the more you pay. And when you're a big company like, I don't know, Miracle Grow's got organic soil now. Oh no, this soil contains organic and natural products. Natural doesn't have any statutory regulatory meaning, none. You could clean out your fingernails and put it in a bottle and shake it around, and it would be natural and organic. Okay. There's no confusion in the produce sector about what organic means. But everything gets confused in the cannabis because somebody's going to make a profit at it. There's no hedging of this or that. Well, I believe, I think there's very set rules of engagement, and they're very demanding. And that's not what cannabis growers want to do. They want an instant answer. You mean I can't just take a bottle and dump it on here and make it organic? No, sir, you can't. See what I'm talking about? So they want to take the word and use it for their own marketing purposes. They're to merchandise some product line. There's no confusion, none whatsoever. Now there is in the cannabis. It was established back in 1958, international treaties. The kelp meal would be defined as kelp fronds, as they're called. They're not called leaves, they're called fronds, would be pulled out of the ocean. They're dried off or cleaned with water and then dried in the sun. And then they're milled to a consistent size for whatever application. And some of it's turned into Japanese nori, kombu, the other forms of seaweed that you enjoy especially if you cook Japanese foods. Okay, anything that was made with a chemical, because remember that was invented in 1951 by Dr. Stoddard, he wasn't doctor, excuse me, Michael Stoddard, who formed a company called the Maxi Crop. And he had a seaweed extract. So in this 1958 convention, it was established that all products that were made from involving chemicals like seaweed extracts made with potassium or sodium hydroxide, that would be called seaweed extract. Kelp meal was kelp meal. You notice they don't sell it as kelp extract. Okay. So when you see seaweed extract, you immediately know, if you've been around the lab a couple of times, that it's a it's a chemical process to extract it. And if it says kelp meal, it means that it's made from kelp. It's ground up kelp. It's ground to a consistent size. Most of it's for livestock feed supplement. That's how good it is. It's used for show dog. It's used with racehorses. That's part of their diet. Can you not understand how the industry would hate a product that you could buy for that price and contain all those nutrients, all 83, and the rights with 350 compounds, alginic acid, mannitol, you got chelating agents, you've got the full range of elements, you've got vitamins, you have plant hormones, all for $1.20 a pound. No wonder they hate it. I would too. I mean, if you just took kelp and made teas, as it's called, to use that vernacular, and by the way, when you're done, that sludge that, from the tea you use to make that tea, it only lost about 40% of its goodies. So you can use that to, decorate your rose plants outside, or your trees, or your shrubs, as you call them, It's still got plenty of bang for the buck. So, why not let your outdoor plants bend, or your indoor plants, put it on as a top dressing? All that for $1.20 a pound. I'd hate it too if I was trying to run a grocery store. Not a lot of profit trying to compete with something like that, is there? So you get sock puppets that go online and bark silly shit. It gets repeated enough times, pretty soon it's well, you haven't heard that kelp will cause your toenails to drop off? Oh no, I didn't know that. I mean, there's like two producers in the world. This isn't like somebody hits the lottery and goes, you know what I think I'll do? I think I'll invest $200 million and go build a plant in Nova Scotia and buy trawlers and go out and start harvesting rockweed.
Although say what you want, that would be a perfect front for a Bond villain. You're out in the middle of the, Atlantic. You're really in the transatlantic. So you have perfect geostrategic location for your secret, nefarious, awesome organization. You get to go out there. You have free fish. You know what I mean? So you have you could have like a Michelin starred restaurant. You know what I mean? I mean, as every secret villain and their lair, you have a ton of people, man. How are you going to attract them? It's kind of like Google. You have to have like daycare and whatever else, sushi.
Well, think about a plant that grows. I got to convert from. Grows 300 feet a year without a root system. It floats in the water. We're talking brown kelp. Other types of kelp grow differently, grow along the shoreline like red kelp. It accumulates 83 elements in the right balance, and it's a plant. So meaning that it can't absorb it, it can't take it up until it's been chelated, right? Meaning that when we add it to our soils, all those nutrients are bioavailable. It's not like calcium that comes in the form of a goddamn seashell. That's a rock. This is calcium it's already gone through that whole process. It's been chelated. Otherwise, the plant couldn't have taken it. The kelp is a plant. It couldn't have taken it up. So now you see why $1.20 a pound would really put the fear of God into a grocery store owner. I mean, that kind of energy that you bring to the discussion. So when we talk about saving money and return on investment, I don't see how you beat an investment like that. You pay $1.20 and you get that kind of yield off your crop. I don't care if you're growing tomatoes or your orchard plants, your trees, what have you. It's going to benefit it all. I've noticed something. I've done this for a couple of decades almost. Is that the better a product is, a material, and these aren't products, these are materials. The better material is, the more the sock puppets come out. Well, I read this study, it was out of Mozambique, done in 1931. Wow, really? So I mean, and the list of warnings just gets rich. I mean, it really does. I mean, I in sense like many years ago when I got rid of my Instagram account, and when I came back for a few months, I remembered why I left the first time. But I heard a term I'd never heard before in all of my time. I never heard the term microbial collapse. That your soil, that you got it so biologically alive that it would collapse. And now it's like taking his gospel because, he hangs out with this old lady. Yeah, I know. I know her science too. So, yeah, I'm okay. I rejected it 20 years ago. So if I got bored with it, 15 years ago, if I got bored with it 15 years ago, can you imagine how boring it is hearing it repeated? 15 years later, the same science that was, pretty much like, oh, really? You know how many generations I've watched swear that compost teas were going to take them to the promised land? Land of Goshen, if only, huh?
We said this kind of thing. It's a little bit like I mean, I have to be honest. It reminds me. I know people will disagree about this. It reminds me of the religion of organics, because you don't really unless you were a microbiologist or an actual a freaking geneticist and whatever else, basically someone who's really basically spends all their time with microbes all the time. I don't feel like you could really know what your compost tea is. I mean, maybe you'll have some
Right.
general ratios and
That's
everything
the-
else, but and you're
It-
missing probably 90% of the stuff that you can't even categorize, stuff that we all know now that there's, or a lot of us know that there's a lot of stuff you can't even culture in a petri dish because it won't allow itself to be cultured. That's 90% of the stuff that's in a healthy soil microbiome. So I mean, how are you supposed to replicate that in a tea? Like what,
Well,
Lipton
that's where-
freaking nematodes? I mean, come on.
Well, that would be where you do something like an IMO collection where you're actually directly harvesting a lot of that stuff from something and then propagating it back out in actual compost. You're using a small amount of compost to make a large amount of compost, that method. And that method, I think, can provide a solution to not all, but at least some of those missing microbes that you certainly aren't going to get from teas.
Here's my, for example, let's take the average person. Let's sit aside. Let's say that compost teas, if done a certain way, caused results that would boggle the mind. It would be science fiction. Just for a second, okay? When you say to a typical person, well, to make good thermophilic compost, we're not even talking vermicompost yet. All right, we're talking thermophilic. You're looking at a year. From the time you do your lasagna, your carbon, nitrogen layering, until you cross the finish line after the mesophilic and you built up the microbes and you cure the curing process. That's the whole deal with the compost is the curing. It isn't the stacking. It isn't the heat. Heat doesn't do all that crap. The heat, 140 degrees, you can't even fry an egg at 140. I mean, so what do you think? You're going to take biomass and turn it into compost at 140?
That's
It's
right.
the
You got to sous vide
microbes.
an egg at like 190. Eggs are surprisingly challenging to sous vide. You'd assume
Right.
maybe you could cook them at 140.
But that's my point.
Fail.
Compost, you're only taking up to 140 to kill pathogens. It's that stage between 99 and about 68, 69, the mesophilic. That's where the microbe colonies return. And so you start adding microbe food, things into that they're going to deconstruct that will encourage their colonies to grow and expand. And that's what I was explaining to, I'm sorry, the other guest from Southern Oregon.
Luna.
You want to turn it. You want to turn that compost so the compost that land on the surface get turned into the center of the pile. And that whole process, we're talking about making artisan compost. You think, the average person's going to pay what that costs to produce? They want some shit that was stacked out behind somebody's barn for a couple of years. Well, I'm sure it's compost now. It's been out there since, whatever. I mean, that's, so when you talk about, I would agree that in the world of, my experience is this, that even people that claim or want to do it organic will say, that's part of it. But the other part is, but isn't there a way, doesn't somebody have a bottle that can do this? I mean, as soon as you start saying, well, here's some of the, what do you call it? Some of the protocols of organic food production. Oh, well, God, that seems like a lot of work. I got to do what now?
By the way, I misspoke. It's 167 Fahrenheit.
It's still way higher than I thought it would be.
They're surprisingly resistant. You got to break down those proteins. I think that's because
can
they're all
you-
protein pretty much.
So if you heat it to like 140 or 150 and it's still not like
White
Yeah.
just set, but the yellow is the yolk is basically still just. It's not even like the good runny. It's like when you crack an egg. It's like
What I enjoyed about Luna was when I told her to look up that if she looked up chitinase salicylic acid pathway, that would open a big discussion, because that's like investigating white blood cells as it relates to human immune system, fighting off diseases and what have you. And then as soon as she started looking at some of the science based on it, There's like, oh my God, you know, so it ties in with other areas that she's worked with. And that's really kind of the cool point, is that it's not a question of replacing anybody's science. It's like, here's another component of science, and you can incorporate that into, I mean, when I was on with, I think it was your show, Steve, that I was on with Mr. Trump, and I didn't ask a question. It's a gentleman that's trying to do a genetic data bank or something. He's been on Fume's show quite a bit. He's based here in Oregon, but he was asking him, and I didn't even know what he meant. Like, what would the Coots mix be in terms of level 1? You know,
Caleb,
huh?
Caleb from Copyleft Cannabis.
Yeah. Anyway, so Mr. Trump said he wasn't familiar with my mix, so I just ran it down real quick. And so, like he said, whatever it means, and I don't know in your world, but a level 2 or something.
IMO2.
Yeah, there you go. Right. So anyway, but I understand. Hey, look, I understand that most people aren't going to spend 2.5 years taking cow shit and turning it into vermicompost. I get that. But that doesn't detract from the validity. The question becomes, what can some people do? Probably isn't me, but what can we do to make it profitable for people to set up operations to get rid of animal waste from the dairy, those sectors, and turn it into viable soil products, and not just bags that have really cool labels. I mean, I used to love to go into grocery stores and look at the pot bags, the potting soil of the pot soils, knowing that they all came out of the same mixer, same peat moss, same, the same everything. The only thing different is the color, the colors of the artwork on the bags.
Sorry about that. And a dog situation. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
But it's not my show. On my show, we just say you're welcome.
Did you guys have anything else? If not, maybe we'll start to wrap up the show.
No, it's been a long show. I think
It was a lot of fun having you back again, Coot.
Right.
And also be sure to check out Coot at the second annual virtual Aquaponic Cannabis Conference, November 13th and 14th. You can find myself over at apmjclass.com. We have a whole bunch of great info. And Growing with Fishes on your favorite podcast app. How do people find you there, Fumi?
Sorry, I was just talking about something in the chat. Probably you were asking me a question that has an easy answer. Find me at Fumidor, Fumidor and the Flavors on YouTube, or Fumidor_Chibidor on Instagram. Let's see here. There's also a photo contest for next month. Follow me over at Portland Cannabis Tasting Society. And of course, feels like we're talking about like some Hollywood production or something now. And I'd like to thank. Anyway, please go visit fumidoro.com. That's my website. So please go take a look for genetic preservation kits, photos, and more, hopefully soon. So fumidoro.com, or also fumesofgold.com. Same website, goes to the same place. Cheers.
I appreciate coming back. I plan on doing a long interview. It's going to be up on YouTube, I guess, or Instagram, maybe both. I'm not sure. Have nothing to do with the production of the actual video. And it's going to kind of be my swan song. It's been a good ride, and I still want to work with individual growers. I don't have any interest in the scene, at all. And
we like having you around.
Well, no, I just meant, there's other things to do. I really want to get focused on on the mycology. I got waylaid. A couple of years ago, I was on this path of doing I got involved with Trad Cotter and other people that around some of the former people work for Paul Stamets, like down at my Myriad Mycology in Ashland. And he was an extractor for 15 years. So anyways, it's just studying some of the medicinal value of the maitake and reishi and the cordyceps, the lion's mane. I want to grow those and learn how to do my own extracts and without blowing through a lot of money and what have you.
That's a good idea.
Sorry. Anyway,
in theory, Steve, have you said this before, that in theory you can actually just press them on a rosin press and squish out the alkaloids like in liquid? No.
For which one?
Lion's mane. I mean, some of them are going to be hard, like agaricon and stuff, but like the softer ones.
You're talking about? No, it's something completely different.
Gotcha. Never mind.
If you're talking about mushrooms, usually it's a two-step process. First, you extract with alcohol.
Gotcha. Never mind.
And then you do the another extract with water. Certain because you're working with beta glucans, and some are soluble with the alcohol, other with the water. So by doing both, you get a more closer to the original profile of the fruit itself, the mushroom itself.
When it's 70% alcohol to 30% water, if you do them both simultaneously.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not expert on that at all. So.
Oh yeah. I might know a thing or two.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it too much on this show, but
we're finally starting to get some activity here. Legitimate discussion about treating depression. Well, a number of health and mental health and physical health related issues with mushrooms, and in particular the psilocybin mushrooms for depression, anxiety, end of life issues, fears of people. I mean, when you know that you're going to die, you're terminal. It's a mindset your mindset can play a great role in how well you live your last days. And so the hope is that with, in particular, psilocybin, that we'll be able to help people make that transition easier. And so they can leave with a sense of decorum for a life well lived. And I think, what else can we do for our fellow men than that? To escort them to the front of the line, to help them make that transition onto the other side. So I'm really thrilled to hear that discussion being made at the political level and with some of the research people at University of Oregon and Portland State and what have you. So. I think at least Oregon and hopefully other states, I don't follow it that closely, but I hope that as a society, we're moving to a more sane approach to some of these important issues. I mean, so that's my read.
Nice, but we're also, I think, entering a whole new robber baron age with the whole rocketry and exploration of space and everything else. So on some level, it feels like maybe we're a piston in the wind, but no, at least we have mushrooms.
A little second renaissance and a new era of adventure. Again, kind of interesting, and
it'd be nice if it was a new adventure. Yeah.
All right, guys, have a good one.
Thanks, Coot. And,
you're welcome, man. Bye.
Thanks, Fumi, and
cheers.
We'll see you guys again Saturday. Saturday on Fumi's show. Why don't you tell everybody what's going on?
Brews and Buds. I was half thinking about taking a break for a couple shows, but we'll see. We might be there on Brews and Buds, and if we are, normally we basically hang, and I like to say we come hang, don't show your wang. We have pretty open platform. It's kind of a pub atmosphere, so I like to add or welcome a lot of folks on the show, as long as they're polite and kind of keep civilized, halfway civilized. I mean, we're all a bunch of stoners, but so we're half civilized. But if you keep half civilized, you're welcome on the show. And we like to talk about honestly a lot of stuff. We talk about grow and all that kind of stuff. Just random technology. Coot is a fanatic for Apple, so you guys probably didn't even know that, but he loves to come and talk about new Apple products or technology, whatever. So whatever, we're stoners, so we babble. But the focus anyway is basically craft beer, craft cannabis, stuff like that, and then we get high and talk about other stuff. So anyway, welcome, folks.
And I'll throw it up on the screen one last time here. You can check me out over at apmjclass.com. Marty and I, the co-host, who's normally on the show as well, aside from Fumidor, who now is basically a new co-host as well. But Marty and I put this class together, many hours of content, over a week's worth of recordings that Marty and I have done, plus farm tours, a whole bunch of cool stuff. Definitely check it out. If you're looking for a more long format class education style. You can find me in your favorite podcast app, Growing with Fishes or Ponics. We're on pretty much everything at this point. And thanks everybody for watching.